Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, candidate for the Democratic primary for the Senate seat in Wisconsin in 2022, Tom Nelson, will be joining us, followed by a special election candidate in Ohio's 11th District, Nina Turner. Lastly, Democratic primary candidate for New York's 9th District. That's these parts. Isiah James will be joining us. Meanwhile, progress reported in U.S.-Iran nuclear deal talks, and coincidentally, an Iranian ship damaged by an Israeli mine attack. Arkansas House and Senate override veto to pass a law criminalizing some health care for transgender children. Congressman Matt Gaetz now fundraising off sex trafficking investigation, allegedly sought a blanket pardon from Donald Trump. That's a weird thing to seek. Huh. New report, 1 in 3 COVID patients diagnosed with psychiatric or neurologic illness within 6 months of infection. The Biden administration launches a massive funeral assistance program for COVID victims through FEMA. Andrew Cuomo signs legislation to roll back the liability protections granted to nursing homes and hospitals for COVID, which incidentally he's also being investigated about. Joe Biden's infrastructure bill polling at 73% approval, and amongst Republicans at 57% approval. Justice Stephen Breyer says court expansion risks the trust of the public, which is another good reason to remind you Justice Stephen Breyer should have retired yesterday. Lastly, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal proposes a constitutional amendment to end corporate personhood. Not going to happen. Good that people are talking about it. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Please say hello to Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
And I say hello to you.
Thank you. Very much appreciated. We've got a lot to get to today. I just wanted to mention 2 things about the some of the headlines that we mentioned today. One being this reversal by Cuomo is part of the greater narrative of this guy's surrounded by scandal now. Sexual harassment scandals, scandals of covering up the deaths of people in nursing homes, and another scandal, which that is now being investigated, both, I think, in the state and the feds. How did hospitals and these nursing homes receive this liability protection? There was something slipped into a bill at the last minute in New York State, and they received this liability protection just coincidentally very shortly after Andrew Cuomo had received, or maybe a commitment to receive, campaign funds we should say shout out to David Sirota and the folks working over at the Daily Poster. They reported on this
Right.
months ago. I mean, maybe, I mean, I don't know, months and months ago. And so they broke this story as far as I remember. And then now, obviously, the pressure built on Andrew Cuomo. He is at his weakest ebb. Flow. And I think ebb.
It's ebb and flow. They come together.
That's true.
But I think it's redundant. Both
yes,
are.
his ebb, his weakest ebb. And as such, we're getting some decent legislation signed and passed in Albany, and that is a good thing. And I also just want to reiterate, it's perfectly fine and expected for a Supreme Court justice to say that any structural change to the Supreme Court they're going to have an issue with, because it's going to, for some reason, impact the trust, the relationship of trust between the public and the Supreme Court judges. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't think that there is that much trust between the public and the Supreme Court justices, and it's certainly not founded on the notion of how many justices there are. There is little doubt in my mind that the vast majority of people in this country would have no idea of what the number of Supreme Court justices are. Far more would have a notion of, hey, wait a second, did they decide the 2000 election? And I would imagine some of the cases that they're going to hear in the near future. Nevertheless, the point is that Stephen Breyer should retire. I didn't even realize that was going to rhyme, but he should retire. There are 2 more years, not even. We are now close to, I would say, 18, 19 months, maybe 20 months, where the Democrats will control the Senate, for sure. And Stephen Breyer is getting up there in age, and he owes it to his legacy, frankly, to the American public and to President Biden to resign now so that Biden has an opportunity to replace him as soon as possible. Maybe another opportunity comes up between now and then or not, but we saw what happened when folks hung on to their seat longer than they should have. When it came to Justice Ginsburg. And look, people can do whatever they want because it's their job and they can stay there until they're literally wheeled out of there. But it is irresponsible. It is irresponsible in my estimation. But be that as it may, we're going to take a quick break. We've got a lot to talk about today on the show. And when we come back, we'll be talking to Tom Nelson. He is a candidate for Wisconsin Senate seat, the federal seat, I should say, currently county executive of Outagamie County in Wisconsin. And when he comes on, he can explain to me how to pronounce that. Folks, a few decades ago, when we were private citizens, being a private citizen used to be largely that, private. But now, thanks to the internet, everything you've browsed, everything you've searched for, everything you've watched or tweeted has been aggregated by third parties into a permanent public record. Well, to keep my data private when I go online, I use ExpressVPN. There are hundreds of data brokers whose sole business is to buy and sell your data. They don't have to tell who you are. They don't have to tell you who they're selling it to. They don't have to get your consent. They just do it. Data harvesters use your IP to uniquely identify you and your location. They just cross-reference a bunch of different data, basically, and get a sense of who you are. Now, we don't know how they're using that today. Maybe today they're using it just because a hedge funder wants to know, where does this guy go online and where does he go in real life? We follow his GPS on his phone, whatever it is. Down the road, you don't know who they're going to sell it to and for what purposes. But with ExpressVPN, your connection gets rerouted through an encrypted server and your IP address is masked. ExpressVPN is so easy to use. Doesn't matter what device you're on. You can use it on your phone. You can use it on your laptop. You can use it on your smart TV even. Obviously, you can use it on your, what do you call those? Pads?
iPads?
Yeah, iPads or tablet. All you have to do, tap one button, you're protected. Boom. It's super easy. So if you're like me and you want to make sure that your data is your business only, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Visit expressvpn.com/majority. Get 3 extra months for free. That's ExpressVPN, ExpressVPN.com/majority. Go to expressvpn.com/majority to learn more. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the future of toileting has arrived. Yes. I mean, technically, this technology has been around for centuries, apparently. But it has been, at least in the modern era, probably in any era, hideously expensive, costing thousands of dollars. What am I talking about? I am talking about the bidet. And now the brand new Hello Tushy 3.0 modern bidet attachment is here, and it is leveling the playing field. It's stylish. It is eco-friendly. It is super easy to install. And yes, it is extremely, almost shockingly affordable. Honestly, I don't know if you bought like toilet paper in bulk lately, but it is shockingly affordable. Save you a lot of money on toilet paper alone, but also it is a revelation. Hello Tushy 3.0 doesn't just cleanse your butts with a precise stream of fresh water. It cleans itself. Cleans itself before and after it's used with the Smart Spray automatic self-cleaning nozzle. It attaches to your existing toilet. It requires no electricity, no additional plumbing. It cuts toilet paper use by 80%. So the Hello Tushy bidet pays for itself in a few months. Sanitation is simple. The Schmutz Shield offers easy cleaning. The knobs are naturally antimicrobial. Plus, every Hello Tushy bidet attachment comes with a 60-day risk-free guarantee and a 12-month warranty. You can upgrade to the new 3.0 model if you're already hooked on Hello Tushy, or if you're new to the revolution, join millions of happy customers right now. Have a clean butt with every flush. Look, folks, this technology has been around forever. It makes the most sense. Somebody said it the other day, like if you get something on your hands that you don't want it on your hands, you don't take a dry piece of paper and wipe it off.
Right.
You run it under a stream of water.
Right.
It's pretty basic stuff. Well, it works with every part of your body, particularly the one that a bidet works on. Believe me, it is a revelation, and you will, and it is very, very affordable, super easy to attach to your existing toilet. Our listeners can go to hellotushy.com/majority for 10% off plus free shipping. Get 10% off plus free shipping. Get your butt clean at hellotushy.com/majority. hellotushy.com/majority. And don't forget, folks, this program relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support this show. You get the free show, free of commercials. We should remind you that all of the commercials, the links are in the podcast description and whatnot, and you can check it out there. Just go to jointhemajorityreport.com. Okay, it is my pleasure to welcome to the program Tom Nelson. He is an announced Democratic candidate for the Senate seat coming up in 2022 from Wisconsin. He is currently the county executive. And Tom, you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation. Out to gamey?
That's it. You got it.
All right.
I'm impressed. You were the first one outside, I think, Central Standard Time Zone to get that. So,
wow,
that is a
sir. My hat tips. Tip my hat to you. If I had a hat, that's of course.
Thank you.
Sam does not know how to pronounce anything, so the fact that he got that right
that's probably why.
Broken clock.
Emma Vigeland is here with us as well. Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I should also say you're an author of One Day Stronger, which tells the story of basically saving a mill in the Fox River Valley. But let's just talk. I mean, let's just start with this. You jumped into this race even before the 2020 general election. Give us a sense of why.
Well, I think it got to the point though, and I was at the point where a lot of people were at, which is I was just sick and tired of Ron Johnson, how he was getting away with things every hour, every day, every week. And I think the only way to deal with this is, of course, to challenge him and to show a clear contrast. Also, this was also the time too when Democrats and even a lot of independents and lean Republicans were getting into these US Senate races, and there was a lot of interest. Now, I'm an underdog, and this was going to be a really challenging race. And so we got on hoping to tap some of that energy and interest, and it turned out to be the case because a lot of folks who were watching those races knew very well that it was only going to be a matter of a few weeks or a month when they started looking at 2022. And of course, the top race was going to be running against Ron Johnson.
So, all right, give me a sense of what's going on in Wisconsin politically. This is a state where the winner of the presidential election in the past two cycles has won by, thousands of votes. We're not even tens of thousands, really. And it is one that has had an incredible history of progressive roots, but also went through a fairly radical change under Scott Walker, at least in terms of getting rid of the right to unionize in the way that we know it. So, I mean, give us a sense of what the challenge is in Wisconsin and where the state is headed.
I think that we are making a pretty clear return to the progressive moorings of where this state was 100 years ago. This was the progressive state, but it's also important to point out, labor's been hit really hard in the last decade. But progressivism was challenged in this way in the 1920s and a part of the 1930s. But we got through that, which was the birth of the modern day Democratic Party. But I think there is, in fact, a populist vein running through the state, just as it is this country in general. And I think you're seeing, because, of course, Donald Trump didn't satiate those needs and those current concerns, it's going to fall to the Democratic Party to take up this challenge, to address what is the concerns of the people. And so this is a really good opportunity, not just for a Democrat to take back this seat, but for a progressive Democrat, someone who is very clear on the issues, whether it's Medicare for all, which I support, and it's very personal. My wife's recovering from cancer. My mom passed away from cancer, but they all had access to good health insurance. Over 30 million Americans cannot say the same thing. And this is also, I wouldn't say a long time coming, but at least 5 or 6 years. Keep in mind, Bernie Sanders, and I was a Bernie Sanders delegate and was endorsed by him in my congressional run. Keep in mind, Bernie Sanders won 71 of the 72 counties in this state. It's very clear that there is an appetite for the people of this state to elect progressive, and a progressive that is very strong, that is very clear in the issues, someone who is going to support H.R. 1. In fact, let me say this, be very, very clear. If you are a Democrat and you are running for the U.S. Senate, if you are a Democrat in the U.S. Senate, and you don't support getting rid of the filibuster to support H.R. 1, you have absolutely, positively no business being in the U.S. Senate or in a Democratic primary.
Well, here. I wanted to bring the conversation quickly back to Ron Johnson because, are you surprised that you're running against Ron Johnson, given that he promised he wouldn't run for a third term going into his his second term when he ran in 2016. I say this facetiously because it seemed like an empty promise at the time, and it turns out that that's what it was.
I'm not surprised at all. He has zero credibility. He's never been clear and upfront with the people of the state. He clearly does not represent the interests. I think he's not been honest with the people of state. And it doesn't really matter if you are a Democrat or a Republican. I hear from Republicans all the time, this is someone that you simply cannot trust. He does not stick to his word. And of course, the clear case of this has been his pledge that he was not going to run for a third term. And not only do I think, and not only am I not surprised, and not surprised that he has not made a decision, and actually, it shouldn't be making a decision. He has made a decision. But the fact that he's waited this long, I think it's a pretty good chance that he is going to stick it out. And if he does, he's not going to win. He's not going to win. And this is, again, I want to go back to my answer before. That's why it's so important for us to elect a progressive. This seat is wide open for a Democrat. We don't need a centrist. We don't need someone who is milquetoast. We need someone who's going to go to Washington, lean hard on issues like Medicare for all. I'm not going to go to Washington to cover millions of people. I'm going to Washington to cover every single man, woman, and child in this country, because it's simply the right thing to do.
Well, why do you think a guy like Ron Johnson, who is obviously incredibly wealthy, and why do you think he won in Wisconsin? I mean, what happened in Wisconsin that a Russ Feingold gets beat by a Ron Johnson?
He got lucky. He simply got lucky, and that's been the story of his life. This is someone who has had life served up on a silver platter. He is he is a billionaire son-in-law. He was handed a business. He's worth millions of dollars now. He happened to run in what turned out to be a tough election cycle for Democrats in 2010, and I would say a tougher election cycle in 2016. And keep in mind, his margins weren't that great. And you had asked before, Sam, about how these statewide candidates have only won by thousands. And that's not always been the case here in Wisconsin. I'd say two things. Yes, our state is divided, but they want to have a candidate who's very clear on the issues. But number two, don't forget that we have been hit hard with voting restrictions, voter ID. And this is also personal to me because my wife was a co-plaintiff on one of the last lawsuits to be settled before the 2020 election, allowing absentee ballots to be returned after a longer period of time. So I think when you look at a seat that a Democrat wins by half a point or 1 point, in reality, they're actually winning by 2 or 3 points, which I think is more consistent with the statewide margins in other states across the country.
Let me get a sense of what your thoughts are in terms of immigration. I mean, it's hard to sort of anticipate what you would see in the coming years. But at one point, the Biden administration, in addition to having to do stuff administratively, there has to be some type of response to the failure for us to provide for immigrants in this country and to resolve this. This is a question that's been going on for 20, 30 years, maybe 40 years. What's your perspective on immigration? What needs to happen?
I think what we need is, first of all, we need to have a clear path to citizenship. You have a lot of folks here in this country who are contributing to society, whether it's economically or socially or culturally. They're giving our communities a lot. In fact, one of the churches that my wife and I attend is a Catholic church that has the largest Hispanic population. Now, I say that it's important to point that out, their contributions to this country, but let's be clear. This isn't about economics or culture or actually, any of those issues. This is we're talking about human beings. We're talking about people who are coming to the border of our country, who are fleeing persecution and violence. They're being separated from their families. We need to have an immigration system that is going to address those issues. I should also say too, though, keep in mind, there has never been a serious piece of immigration legislation that's come to the floor of the Congress by the Republicans, despite all the rhetoric, despite everything that they've done. And I've been hit hard on this issue. I was hit hard with a Willie Horton-esque ad in 2016. And the reason why Republicans have not been serious about immigration is because it is part of their business model. That's the reason why the U.S. Chamber of Commerce opposes that. That's the reason why the Wisconsin or the National Restaurant Association, that's why the Koch brothers have opposed it. And, we're going up against some forces that really don't want to change anything. And I think that that's going to be a problem for passing any type of immigration reform.
Talking about going up against forces that don't want to change anything. I mean, a lot of what Biden's infrastructure package has sparked was a conversation amongst Democrats and progressives about what's too big, what's too small, right? You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying she favors a $10 trillion infrastructure investment in order to combat climate change. What's your view on the Green New Deal and how we're going to take on the behemoth of the fossil fuel industry as progressives, and how you would do so in the Senate?
I think along with Medicare for all, we have to have a very aggressive Green New Deal. We need to have a Green New Deal that is attached to net zero emissions proposal. And as a county executive, we've done some of those initiatives at a county level. We have a general aviation facility for which is a net zero facility in which it produces the renewable energy that it consumes. Examples like that. And I also think that Wisconsin is in a good position. A senator, a representative from Wisconsin is in a good position to do that, because this is the birthplace of the modern day environmental movement with Gaylord Nelson. And we're also one of the top manufacturing countries in the world, or in the nation. And so you need to have a blue-green coalition in order to make the Green New Deal succeed. Clean energy is the future because humanity is the future. And I think that we should be as aggressive as possible. We need to look at this timetable and any type of energy policy. The question should be, does this move us toward a renewable future? If the answer is yes, we should support that. If it's not, we should push back at that and not give it really any consideration.
Tom Nelson, folks can go where to get more information about your candidacy?
NelsonFordWI.com, NelsonFordWI.com, same for Twitter and Facebook, and my book, OneDayStrongerBook.com, OneDayStrongerBook.com. It's a great website. My wife did it for us, so we're doing very well, and hope we can get that message out about how labor is the future of manufacturing and the economy in this country.
I appreciate your time today, and we hope to catch up with you, and good luck with your race.
Thank you, sir. Good to be on.
All right, folks, now going to welcome to the program a Democratic candidate for Ohio 11th in a special election that is replacing Marcia Fudge, who has joined the Biden administration. She's a former campaign co-chair for Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign and a former Ohio State Senator. Nina Turner, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm here with Emma Vigeland.
Hi, thank you, Sam. And Emma, how are you, darling?
I'm doing well. How are you, Nina?
Good.
So, you've had some pretty big news the past couple of days that has come out, both in terms of endorsements and in terms of fundraising. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, a little bit of big news between the House of Labor and also earning the endorsement of my mayor of my home city, Mayor Frank D. Jackson, and also Councilman Blaine Griffin, who is a leader in this community and on the same council that I served. Yeah, quite a big deal. And on the fundraising front, our quarter, the first quarter in 2021, we raised almost $1.6 million and $2.2 million total. For a progressive candidate in a special election, that is not bad.
Yeah.
My grandmother would say that ain't bad if she was here today. That ain't bad. So I'm really proud of that, Sam and Emma, that we've raised money from every zip code in the 11th congressional district in Ohio, and just for people who are with us, great portions of Greater Cleveland and also portions of Greater Akron make up the 11th congressional district, and we've raised from all 50 states, including the District of Columbia. Our average donation is now at $28. It was at 20. That's that sweet 27 spot for a very long time. And thank you for asking. I just want to shout out and just thank all of the incredible people, starting with my district, state, and the people in this nation who are fueling this race.
And that's a big deal because there's half a dozen folks running in this special election. And to establish your presence in such a strong way this early in the race is a big deal. But just tell us a little bit about the district and give us a sense, of the people there, the geography, if you will, or I guess the demographics, and why you're suited to represent that district more so than the other 6.
Yeah, I mean, we're rugged, and we're certainly part of the industrial Midwest. Steel was a really big deal for us in Cleveland, and then when you Akron, which is our sister, Northeast Ohio, rubber for them. And this district, this my state, but particularly Northeast Ohio, very hit hard by some of the trade deals, exacerbated the joblessness and the suffering. And we fast forward to now with COVID still raging. We haven't tamed it yet, but we're working on that as a nation. And certainly that COVID relief bill was a step in the right direction. But just really working class people. The district does, however, and I always hesitate when I say there are levels to the working class. Let me just say that. But unless you got some special fund somewhere, everybody is working, but there's certainly levels. So we have the entire economic spectrum, from people who are doing extraordinarily well to people who are living in poverty. Half of the children in this district are living in poverty. Ethnically and racially, very diverse district, but African Americans are the majority of this district. We have a very large Jewish population. Half of this district was my Senate district. So I've served this community, and I was on the Cleveland City Council too before going to the Ohio Senate. So I am no stranger to service, like political service and activism service, but particularly political service of this community.
We're talking so much about infrastructure in the lead up to Biden's bill being introduced, $2.25 trillion, which is smaller than he had initially been weighing. And even someone like Joe Manchin had said that he'd be open to a $4 trillion stimulus. I see, on your campaign platform, you talk about housing as a human right. Some of what the bill includes is housing infrastructure, but a lot of progressives are saying it just doesn't go far enough. What's your stance on that, and how a larger infrastructure package potentially would help your potential district?
I would say it is certainly a good start, but we definitely need to go bigger. Systemic problems demand systemic solutions. And this country, even before President Joe Biden's tenure, time in office, we have neglected infrastructure. We have neglected to recognize our sins against Mother Earth, and all of those things are really catching up with us. And so I do agree with my progressive sisters and brothers, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Squad, others who understand that we need to make infrastructure not only a number one, but also put in the requisite money to deal with the type of needs. And so that would impact the 11th congressional district jobs. The types of jobs that will come into this district, because we need to repair those roads and bridges. Those would be high paying jobs too. Unionized jobs, very important. That PRO Act that the Senate needs to deal with is vitally important. So infrastructure and reform, we have neglected as a country our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our airports, our communities, our schools, our sewer, our water lines. All of those things need fixed. And at the same time, we can do it in a way that greens America, that reduces our carbon emissions. All of those things go together. So 10 trillion over 10 years is a better investment. And I applaud the progressives for fighting and pushing for that. Good start by the Biden administration, but we need to go further.
Let's talk about this sort of in a more general sense, because I think obviously, you have represented your district in like you say, in multiple different facets. And so from a national perspective, as people are thinking we're going to engage in this race, you are as associated with the Squad as anybody who's not in Congress, I would say at this point, right? And AOC came out and endorsed you. I think it was now, 3 weeks ago. Well, give me a sense of your theory of change. I mean, how does a group like the Squad, which is growing but has a certain amount of power, but not necessarily as much power as we hope that they will have down the road, How do you, where do you see the sort of how that tracks in terms of exercising power and making those decisions when, you don't want to ruin the power that you have and diminish it, but you also don't want to keep the powder too dry?
Yeah, I mean, more of us, Sam, more of us. And you're absolutely, I mean, I've been on this journey, this social justice journey for a while. And even though I'm not actively elected, and I know it is rare for somebody to not be actively elected, but be on assignment. And I have been on assignment for a while here, from being with Senator Bernie Sanders in both of his presidential campaigns to leading a national organization really focused. So in the context of the theory of change, the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the Squad, all of those conscious-minded people, and this movement itself is the personification of that theory of change. I mean, let's face it, some of the things that are coming from the Biden administration is because of progressives. So no, we didn't get the $15 an hour minimum wage in the COVID relief bill. However, the progressives stood strong in trying to push it. People like Congressman Ro Khanna and Congresswoman Jayapal and others laid it on the line. You got people like Dr. William Barber, who, again, those activist organizations saying, hey, why are y'all listening to the parliamentarian? Let's go ahead and do this thing right on behalf of the 140 million plus people who are among the working poor and just flat out poor in this country. Everything about the 2020 presidential election, Emma and Sam, was animated by a progressive agenda. And this is the icing on the cake. Most of what progressives are fighting for, the American people, regardless of the ideological spectrum that they label themselves, agree with what progressives are pushing. So we must get more progressives in the Congress, particularly the House of Representatives. And as our numbers grow, we cannot hesitate to leverage our power in a very strategic way that gets us what we need to be able to change the material conditions of the American people.
How much do you sense that the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign, which you were, of course, a part of, as well as the 2020 campaign, just indelibly changed the Democratic Party? Because you have Joe Biden saying, no, I'm not going to listen to Larry Summers' op-ed, and I'm not going to change this $1.9 trillion figure for my stimulus package. And a conservative senator, a conservative Democrat for most of his life. And now it seems like just the door has been cracked open, and it seems to be, we're going to be able to push it even further based on the groundwork laid by the Bernie Sanders campaign and your work on the campaign as well. Like, do you see that there's even further that we can push the Biden administration? Does that just open the door even more so? Or is he kind of going to, is it going to stay stagnant, I guess, would you say?
Well, you win some and you lose some, Emma. I do believe that we're going to continue to push President Biden. And when I say we, it is the elected officials there, but it's also coming from the grassroots too. I mean, most humanitarian change, I will call it, most change that has been deeply seated in changing trajectory in this country, whether it's political, economic, environmental, racial, you name it, to a deep degree, came from the grassroots pushing and not relenting. And the beautiful thing about the progressive movement and all of there is a mosaic within the progressive movement. The progressive movement itself is not homogeneous. But that movement, the maelstrom of that movement, will continue to push both elected officials and also this presidency. And we cannot stop pushing. Why settle? Systemic problems require systemic solutions. And we know that, particularly because of the pandemic, leaves no doubt that there is something criminal in many ways about this system. And I'm not just talking about the justice system. I'm talking about the predatory capitalism, the fact that the wealthy, ultra wealthy in this country have seen their wealth increase by over $1 trillion. But meanwhile, back on Main Street, we got to beg people to lift the minimum wage. We got to beg people to know that we got to keep the moratorium on evictions and all of those kinds of things. So the progressive movement's job is to keep our foot on the gas and to continue to push, and we will get movement. And so far, the Biden administration is moving. I will definitely give them credit for that, but we can't stop. They are moving, Emma, because of the earlier point you made. They are moving because of what transpired in 2015 with the candidacy of Senator Bernard Sanders, and that 21st century of this progressive movement is fully on display.
So lastly, what do you need to do to win in what does it take to win a special election when you got half a dozen, fairly crowded field? Obviously, the fundraising quarter you just had, very helpful. Picking up the SEIU Local 1.
Yeah.
And
Local 1 and 11.99. Sorry to cut you off. Yes.
But
please do cut him off.
Yeah, do. But once you get that, what ultimately is going to win this election for you?
Being out there among the people. A lot of that is virtual because of the pandemic. We campaign in a different way. It's a hybrid model going on because you want to keep people safe that you want to interact with. I want to keep my team safe. But yet, I am an in-person person, as both of you know. I mean, I really love being out among the people, but it's touching the people. It's the good old-fashioned way. There's nothing that can take. I mean, yes, we have a lot of tools at our disposal, be it social media and other tracking tools that we have, but nothing can take the place of me being able to look in your eyeballs and to ask you to support me, to vote for me. So we're doing both of those things. It is awakening sleeping giants. Unfortunately, in my home county, the voter turnout was extraordinarily low during a presidential election. This is a special election. And in early voting starts in July. Who's thinking about voting in July? And then the election day is August the 3rd. So we are going to have to awaken sleeping giants, make contact with the voters, and that fundraising that the investors in this campaign made will allow us to be able to touch voters in a multitude of ways, but especially I'm excited about getting out there among them. Sam, is just good old fashioned. You got to touch people. And you got to get them out to vote. And that's certainly what we plan to do. It will be an older electorate, as you know, because it is a special election. It will be voters who lean, very traditionally D. So for me as the progressive, I want progressives to know out there that even though they may know me, this is not a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination, that progressives have to do the work. We need time we have to do the work. So time, talent, treasure, interfacing with the voters, letting them know why I'm running to help to change their material conditions, to make their lives better. And that's what it's going to take to win.
Well, what's been going on in Ohio for the past, I guess now 2 decades? At one point, Ohio was a swing state. It doesn't feel like it is anymore.
We're not swinging much, Sam, at all.
What is this a function of? I mean, what has been the dynamic that A, has been happening from a material standpoint to folks in Ohio, and B, why have they turned to the Republican Party as a solution to that?
I mean, it was a populist message. Fascism, neo-fascism had to be booted out the White House. So Mr. Trump had to go, but his message in 2016 was a populist message, and it was more populist than the Democratic side. And when he started talking about those trade deals, that meant something to the people of the state of Ohio. And let me remind you both that this is a state that voted for Senator Obama and then President Obama. I mean, we delivered this state twice. So I do believe that muscle memory is still there, but we have got to tap into the fears and the hopes of the voters of this state. And even in the southern parts of the state, we have to do the same thing. I was on mission for President Obama in 2012 when it looked like Ohio was going to be a toss-up, that he might not have won re-election here. And I traveled mainly into the southern parts of Ohio to try to convince my white working class sisters and brothers that President Obama had earned a second term and that he would be the best person for them. And they responded. So we have to get back to that and not be afraid to have the class and caste conversations with people across this state. The Poor People's Campaign, the 21st century version of that is being pushed by Reverend Barber, is key. That messaging to bring people together. I'll give you, Emma, a great example. When we were fighting against Senate Bill 5, That was really a class and caste conversation. And Senate Bill 5, as you two may remember, was the anti-worker, the anti-union bill. It was really an attempt to turn Ohio into a right to work state. And even in those moments when I was talking to, again, working class white sisters and brothers, to get them to understand that our destinies are indelibly linked. I mean, there were some places in the state that I went when I was the only African American in that room. We have to get back to that. Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, the things that Congresswoman Barbara Jordan was Congresswoman Shirley Smith did in her Shirley Chisholm. Lord have mercy. My colleague, Senator Shirley Smith, is running in this race. I'm channeling the Shirleys. She will be happy to get that shout out by me. But Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, those kind of class dynamics, it's what Fannie Lou Hamer did in Mississippi with the Freedom Party, when her, poor whites and poor blacks got together and they challenged the status quo in the 1960s of the Democratic Party. We must come together and do that again and unite on that and understand that we are going to rise and fall together. That progressive populist message married together, that Eugene Debs message. And I aim to do that in the greater state of Ohio. If I am the one elected to the 11th congressional district, I'm certainly understand that I serve a district, that I serve my state by extension, and I serve this nation even further extended. And I plan to get on the ground and try to swing this state back to some shade of purple.
Nina Turner, if folks want more information, they want to help you out, where should they check it out?
Oh, they should go to ninaturner.com, ninaturner.com. And on social media, on Twitter is Nina Turner. On Instagram is Nina Turner Ohio. And on Facebook is Nina Turner. Oh my God, please join us. We need you. We're going to do great things together. Join us on this journey.
Thank you so much for joining us, Nina Turner. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Emma. My pleasure.
Bye-bye. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to speak to one more candidate, Isiah James. He's running for the Democratic primary in New York's 9th district. Some time off, but what do they call it? The early support makes yeast? I can't remember.
What?
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Like to welcome to the program. He is a candidate for the 9th District of New York. Isiah James, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, Isiah, first, let's start with this. Why don't you just give us a little bit of a sense of the 9th district in New York? That's actually almost right outside the door here.
Yeah, it's a historic district. This is Shirley Chisholm's old district. This was Anthony Weiner's district. It's 55% African American. It's right in the heart of Brooklyn. It's literally from the Barclays Center down here to the ocean. It's comprised of mostly working people. All these essential workers that we've been talking about for the last year, most of them live right here in this district and come from this district. Give us a sense also of the folks there, because it's a pretty disparate, diverse district at this point. Yes, well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I always tell people this stuff doesn't happen by accident. So you have parts like Park Slope, and then you have parts like, the Albany houses. So there's literally concentrated wealth and abject poverty right in the same district. You can see Prospect Park and Park Slope from the Albany houses, and that doesn't happen by accident. These lines are drawn on purpose, on paper. You can't have that sort of dichotomy between the haves and the have-nots in the same district unless those who are in power want it to be so.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think they wanted that Those type of dramatic disparities?
Because the people who live in the Albany houses, they think, this is how politicians think. They think those people don't deserve a voice. They're not triple prime voters. They're not homeowners. They barely pay taxes in some of their eyes. They're on government assistance. Why should we care about those people? But we need to keep those people to keep our numbers up so we can keep getting money for the district, but the money never goes to those people. And that's where I come in. I can go to the Albany houses. I can go to NYCHA and talk to those people like they're regular people because I'm one of those people. I grew up in public housing and I understand that those people deserve just as much representation as everybody else. But if you ask yourself, over the last 15, 20 years in this district, we've had Democrats in control, Republicans now back to Democrats, and things have gotten demonstrably worse. So if it doesn't matter who's in charge, it matters what the people in charge do when they're in charge. And obviously we've had no representation for the past 15 years.
So I wanted to ask you, because you touched on it there just about housing, but when people think of the word gentrification, often they'll maybe think of Brooklyn, right? I mean, I think that's one of the number one, I guess, ground zeros or places when you think about that word. What has Yvette Clark and the leadership in your district done in terms of complicity? Because there has to have been something.
I am so glad you brought that up. So let's run a few things back. Remember 2 years ago, Amazon wanted to move to New York City and displace thousands of people from Long Island City. That would have had a spillover effect here in Brooklyn. Yvette Clark, as a matter of fact, signed the letter urging Amazon to move to New York City. That's number one. Number two, she takes thousands of dollars from giant real estate corporations and developers who are displacing the very same people she purports to help, that she says that she wants to help. You can't be both arsonist and firefighter at the same time. You cannot get up here and say that you're for affordable housing and you take money from the same entities that drive people out to the margins of society. You cannot say you're for workers and you want major corporations to come in and displace those workers. She takes more money from Amazon's lobby than any other representative in New York City. And this is a Black woman in a district that is 55% African-American, Afro-Latino and Caribbean. She is hurting the very people she says she goes to Washington to represent. And it's not just her. This is most of these corporate Democrats out there. Look at what has been happening over the last 100 years in this country. No matter who is in charge, our leaders never seem to figure it out. I just read an article. Microsoft just got a $2 billion contract to provide augmented reality to the United States Army. Can we get healthcare, please? Can we get single-payer healthcare? Can we get, free college for people? We can find money for every damn thing in the world besides the things that we actually need to make people's lives better.
Isiah, you've been a housing activist for years. You mentioned yourself grew up in public housing. Is there a bigger issue? I mean, for a district like this one than housing? It seems to me that is. I mean, obviously there are other issues on it, but that housing seems to be particularly poignant when you're talking about this district in Brooklyn.
Yes, it is. It is, but also I don't like to look at things in singular issues. Imagine if you have a stable place to live, but you're struggling with mental health because you can't pay student loans and you got kicked out. You got kicked out of your parents' house because you came out as a trans person. So all of these issues are interconnected, but yes, housing is a national issue. What's good for Central Brooklyn is good for the nation. This is a microcosm of the working class right here. Every nation on earth, every language spoken, every religion, sexual orientation, creed, everything is right here in Central Brooklyn. If we can get it right here, that spillover, it goes to the entire nation. But right here in Central Brooklyn, working people aren't even being pushed to the margins. They're being pushed off the entire friggin' map right now. This is the epicenter of gentrification, and we have to get it right. NYCHA's owed $70 billion right now. Right now, how come we can find the Democrats just voted again for a National Defense Authorization Act for $700 billion, but we can't find enough money to get the lead out of the paint in NYCHA. We can't find enough money to stop all the asthma cases for children in our district. It's impossible to believe.
Tell folks what, folks listening from around the country, what NYCHA is, and also give us a sense of how would you address the question of gentrification in a place like Brooklyn?
I'm glad you asked that. NYCHA stands for the New York City Housing Authority. It's the largest portion of public housing anywhere in the world. And sadly to say, there's a law in the books called the Faircloth Amendment, which says that Congress cannot use funds to build any new public housing in America, ever. So that's why our housing is dilapidated and falling off. It's falling, it's been there since the 50s. It hasn't been renovated. What I would do to combat gentrification is we need community land trust right now. We need a home ownership program. Like, I'm a veteran, so we get a VA loan from the VA. We need a program like that nationwide for folks who are making less than $50,000, $60,000 a year. Because anybody who, you ask anybody, the way to cut generational poverty, one way is through home ownership. And Black people who look like me have been systematically kept from home ownership. So let's right the wrongs of the past, of gentrification, of redlining, of Jim Crow. Let's start a home ownership program to get these folks out of NYCHA into houses and build that generational wealth. Those are just two things we can do right there off the bat.
Well, you mentioned, home ownership, and often we'll hear talking points about the millennial generation. Oh, they don't want to have kids. It's all their choice, right? As opposed to the crippling student loan debt that prevents them from having kids and buying a home. So I would imagine you're in favor of canceling student loan debt. Do you have a plan in terms of, if you were to be elected to Congress, how to address education and specifically college?
Absolutely. I'm so glad. As you see behind me, my wife is a New York City first grade teacher. So literally 10 minutes ago, she was teaching her first graders. I was like, babe, I need the computer. So my wife is a public school teacher and she's been teaching from home for a year. The way we address the school loan thing is easy. I'm a veteran, $770 billion on defense. Who are we fighting against? We're spending $80,000 a missile to bomb poor people in Yemen and in Iraq and Afghanistan. And once you see the sausage being made from the inside, then you understand how corrupt the system is. We need to cut our military budget in half just to start. That would free up $355 billion a year right there. That is more than enough to send everybody in this nation to college if they would want to, for years, right then and there. And another thing we need to do, we need to close every single corporate tax loophole. Apple is a $2 trillion company. Why they're getting tax breaks is beyond me. Same thing with BP, with Boeing, with every one of these companies that the Democrats seem to go along with and vote for every single time. So don't let anybody ever tell you that the money is not there. It's how we allocate those resources. But the money is there. We just need people who are willing to put political skin in the game and stand up for what is right.
Yeah, we should mention, you mentioned a couple times here, Yvette, a couple of tours, I think it was in Iraq and one in Afghanistan.
2 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Afghanistan. I came back 90% disabled from being wounded.
So let me just ask you this. This is your, you ran in the 2020 cycle. What are you going to do differently this time that is going to bring you to the forefront in this primary? We're about a year and a half off from the primary, so you're getting started early.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. What's the second thing?
So the big thing that we didn't have last time was funds. It's very hard for a grassroots campaign to raise funds when you do it the right way. I didn't take any of that type of money. That's why we only raised a little over $20,000. We only spent $11,000, but with that, we got over 10,000 votes. Now, I'm not the smartest, book on the shelf, but if I extrapolate that out, if we raised $500,000, we would have got 50, 60,000 votes. So that means that the message carries. People understand the dire situation that we are in, and they understand that we need people who are going to work for everyday people. We just didn't have enough money to get our message to those people. So, we were outraised by $1.5 million, and we beat city council members. We beat people who raised millions of dollars and came in third place with no money and just a grassroots scrappy team. So the first thing is raising more money. The second thing, like you said, is getting out there now. I'm sitting here over a year talking to you. Last cycle, I think I got 3 or 4 interviews. I learned so much from last cycle, and it only emboldened me to try harder, because during that, nothing has changed. If anything, things have gotten worse because the pandemic peeled the Band-Aid off that was America. America is a homeless person with a Gucci belt right now. That's what we are. It looks good from the outside, but it's not good on the inside. Once you look at it and see that, wait a minute, we have this level of income inequality, this level of racism in America, we need to truly, truly fix things. And this piecemeal stuff that we've been doing is not going to work. Incrementalism only gets you so far. Incrementalism gets you separate but equal, which was never equal. Incrementalism gets you Jim Crow. They can stay over there, we can have ours. We need bold, transformational leadership in Congress right now. I'm 34 years old, and we were just talking about millennials. My wife is 33. We live in a 1-bedroom basement. It's not that we don't want to have children. We can't afford to have children. We can't even afford to get pregnant if we wanted to, because, geez, how much would that cost to move into a new apartment in New York? It would be $2,700, $2,800 a month that we can't afford. We need people who are going to stand up for everyday people, not the Fortune 500.
Isaiah, where can folks get more information about your campaign, maybe help out?
They can go to Isaiah for Congress, ISIAH for Congress.com. They can go Isaiah for Congress on Twitter, Isaiah for Congress on Facebook. And if folks can donate $5, $10, whatever, even if they can't donate, just please share the message, retweet the message, follow the message, like the message. Every 6 degrees of separation, we all know somebody. That's how I'm sitting here talking to you. I don't know how this worked out, but it worked out. So obviously we can get our message to a national audience. It's over and done with.
Isiah James, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, folks, wrapping up here. We will put links to all the candidates that we spoke to, all 3 that we spoke to today, in our descriptions. You can check that out. You can watch this again, of course, on the Peacock app, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Watch these folks. And we're going to try and do a couple of these every couple of weeks so that we get some of these progressive candidates. The earlier they get going, the better their chances are. This feels like it's a long way out, but that's how long it takes for these campaigns. So,
yeah, except for Nina Turner's race, which is going to be in the summer.
Nina Turner's is going to happen earlier. Hers is a special election, and we will look into more of that. Thanks for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. Is that right?
I think so.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Great. We will see you then. And for those of you sticking around, we're going to be here today. Is Brandon joining us? Brandon? I think he is, right? Or did we forget? Did you forget to send him an email? Maybe he's coming tomorrow.
Hello?
I can check.
That is one of the challenges of A, coming back from vacation, but B, also doing the show remotely. And it's happening soon. Now, I should address the elephant in the room, which is that I did not wear a white shirt today.
Well, neither did I, so.
Yeah, so we're basically on the same page again.
Well, it's not basically. I'm wearing a pink shirt.
I got but I'm saying,
and I never wear pink, and I'm not sure if I'm feeling it.
This is the first time I've ever worn a gray shirt, and I bought
I actually noticed it. I thought, is it new?
It's new. I bought, I can't, after the first time that we both had white shirts, I was like, I got to get one more color shirt, and this is the color that they had.
J. Crew?
Yeah, it's the same shirt. It's just that it's gray.
Right.
And
but gray is nice. I'll get my boyfriend gray stuff so he doesn't accidentally mix black and blue, because you're not supposed to do that.
I was not familiar with that.
Yeah, gray is it goes with everything.
That's why people are asking me, well, how come I look pale today? It's because I'm not wearing a blue or a white shirt. So
I don't think you look pale.
I don't know. That's what people are saying. Folks,
how dare
just a reminder, how dare them? Just a reminder, is your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you get the free show free of commercials. You also get the extra content. And, it's probably other stuff. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I can't come up with what it would be. But, that's enough.
Yeah.
What more do you want? Also, don't forget, justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. Get 10% off. They're based in Madison, Wisconsin. I actually had an opportunity a couple of years ago to go visit their operation there, and it was awesome. I think there's a picture floating around out there. They are a co-op, and not only did they, when I went out to Madison for the protest against Scott Walker, very early on in this show. I think I actually did the first sort of live on the street broadcast from there, or maybe I just recorded. I can't remember. But Just Coffee, they were giving out coffee to the people who were protesting.
Oh, cool.
And they're also great with the way that they treat their producers. A lot of roasters, they'll buy coffee and they buy from various roasters around, a lot of collectives. But they will, if the weather's bad and their production is down or not, not up to snuff, a lot of roasters will just say, well, screw you. We're just going to move to someone else and get it. Just Coffee will work with them and figure out like, okay, give us this blend. We're going to do this blend. We're going to augment it with this and with that. And the coffee tastes great, but they take care of not only their people that are in the co-op, but they take care of their producers too, which I thought was really impressive. So check that out, justcoffee.coop. They also have like a tea and chocolate, and it's fair trade, obviously. And they have the Majority Report blend. Ah. Or you can get that really bitter WTF blend. But the Majority Report blend is much better.
Okay.
And,
well, then you just insulted their other blend, but...
Well, it's the Marin's show. That's all right.
Oh.
They know. They know
what they're saying.
They
know what this is.
They understand where that comes from. So check that out, justcoffee.coop. And also the AM Quickie. Check that out, folks.
Left Reckoning.
Left, right. Oh, well, I was going to let Matt talk. I was going to say, I was going to let Matt.
I didn't know. It's just, I forgot every.
Thank you, Emma. Thursday, Nathan Bernard. Thursday night, we have Nathan T. Bernard. He's a free speech activist, also a journalist. He writing about this unionization campaign for Maine Medical, the nurses, which would double the nurses' union size to about 4,000 people. And we also talked about the unabashed liberal union buster who they have hired to come in and try to break that effort, who had previously worked with Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. So where we only get the most progressive union busters. So we talk about that with Nathan Bernard tomorrow night. Left Reckoning YouTube channel. Go subscribe to that, folks.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
To
We are back.
Hello.
All right. Well, I can't. Do I have the hiccups?
I think you may.
Do you have any pickles in the studio?
It is funny because Saul said to me literally 2 days ago, have you ever gotten hiccups on your show? And I was like, you know what? Now that I think about it, no.
I haven't gotten hiccups in years.
Yeah, well, but there you go. I mean,
what's the trick?
To not getting hiccups?
Yeah, what's your trick?
To get rid of them is pickles or pickle juice, preferably.
I used to
to not think about it. That's probably, and I've probably blown that now.
Did you piss off some sort of witch this morning?
What?
You're cursed.
No, I don't.
I used to take like a big gulp, and then someone told me the trick was put your neck back like that, and then just take little tiny sips so that there's no air and it just goes down. I don't really know.
Yeah, they were just playing with you.
I was taught that at camp.
Yeah, that's like an old counselor thing to mess with the kids. I don't know if that's true.
My trust is broken forever.
Morella 622. We all look pale during the pandemic, Sam. Not enough outdoor time. Need more sun exposure. Yeah, no kidding. MSNB Seder says, Sam, you need some spray tan so you can be the best shade of orange. Many people are saying it's the best look there is for us alphas. And Robo Gorka says, I can hear Michael mocking Sam for buying the exact same shirt in just a different color. Remember when Sam wore that shirt with a tear in the sleeve for way too long? Good times. Yeah, well, I mean, I know what shirt you're talking about. I think I probably still have that. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam and Emma. This is John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. Long time no hear from. How are you, John?
Yeah, I'm doing fairly well. Yeah, I loved your interviews with the candidates, the leftist candidates this morning, so that was great. Yeah, wasn't sure about the timeliness about this call, but there's a real good article by Alex Salmon in the Prospect called "The Biden Administration Squares Off with Progressive Candidates in Louisiana," so I guess I'm going to give it a shot.
Okay.
So conservative Democrat Congressman Cedric Richmond resigned to be an advisor to Biden. Richmond represented Louisiana's 2nd District, which has a 61% black constituency and covers New Orleans and Baton Rouge. Louisiana elections have jungle primaries, and while Republicans and Democrats run on the same ballot, if no one receives 50% plus one vote, there is a runoff. The top 3 candidates for this seat for the jungle primary were sitting conservative Troy Carter, who has the endorsement of Richmond, sitting state senator Karen Carter Peterson, who is supported by Stacey Abrams, who supports Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, and the most left candidate, Gary Chambers, who you gave an endorsement to on January 9th, and you talked about him on your show. The most controversial endorsement on the left came from the national version of Our Revolution, who endorsed Carter Peterson because they thought Chambers didn't have a chance of winning, considering Carter Peterson didn't endorse Bernie in 2016 or 2020. There's a lot of anger directed towards Our Revolution from former Bernie supporters. The initial polling only had Carter at 4%, but then it improved to the mid-teens, with Carter and Carter Peterson being the heavy favorites. On election night, March 20th, Chambers surprised everyone with coming within 1.6% of making the runoff, or 1,510 votes behind Carter Peterson. At that point, the big question became, will Chambers endorse Carter Peterson, which he eventually did and campaigned with her. So early voting for the election starts on Saturday and runs through the 17th, and then the actual election day is on the 24th, where you can vote in person. And so Deb Holland was the representative of New York's 1st District and is now Biden's Secretary of the Interior. The biggest problem started from the very beginning when we were talking about the vote for who's going to replace her. I read many articles on this race, and I still haven't seen the complete breakdown. But the bottom line is that the average voter didn't get to vote in the primaries. Instead of, they had a central committee made of party elites who got to pick who the nominee is. When primaries are alleviated, state officials always blame the money that they have to spend to hold the election. Yet a vast majority of special elections, the voters get to decide who the candidates are. New Mexico Secretary of State Mary Toulouse Oliver, who I thought had decent politics, talked about having quick representation, but denying primary voters a choice is unacceptable. In the Democratic side of the primary, Antoinette Cedillo Lopez, who was endorsed by the Justice Democrats for this seat in 2018, was polling before the election, polling ahead of Deb Holland, but eventually Deb Holland won the race. So I was disappointed with her take on why people didn't get to vote. She said that any registered Democrat could participate in the ward and precinct meetings that produce the current central committee. But I believe that's there should be
primaries, right? Of course.
Right. So I mean, in the end, what happened was everybody thought that Cedillo Lopez was going to win. And if they would have just voted on a plurality, she won 37%, and the closest person behind her, Melinda Stansbury, only won 22%. But since it wasn't on a plurality, it was on a majority, they had a runoff, and in the end, even though Cedillo Lopez was the heavy favorite, Stansbury actually picked up, I think, 29% of those voters who didn't vote for her in the first round, whereas Cedillo Lopez only picked up 11%, and she ended up being the nominee. So I don't know if you have any questions or comment about any of those races. And I also want to say that I really enjoyed the Lawrence Lessig interview that you did on Ring of Fire, and now that you're doing an extra interview for members now on that show, because I really been enjoying that show for many years now. And also on your Peacock stuff, I'm really enjoying that, and I'm glad that they're putting up, I think there's 19 different interviews you have on your exclusive. I know this show is your main show, and I encourage people to watch this show first. But if you can't get enough of Sam, it's a nice every morning or during the weekdays anyway. You can watch Sam's interviews on Peacock, and I'm just really enjoying that.
Thanks for the plug, John.
Well, John, very, very much appreciated. Emma is going to be joining that second hour on Peacock, and she's going to start to do some interviews as well, so that I will have a little more time to attend to my children and get a little more sun.
Okay. All right.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for that
Thanks,
update.
John.
I'm going to check out that Alex Salmon piece.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care.
John from San Antonio. Somebody had just posted the last April Fools, a year ago, April Fools, that we did Ken and Ken show.
Oh, yeah.
And this was, Michael and I were supposedly at different, I was in Fenway and he was at the Bruins game in the Garden.
TDA.
And we got a phone call from, what is it? Anthony from San Juan, which is the sort of caller, the sort of really the John from San Antonio version.
Right.
And that was very, very funny. Don't know who did those calls, but whoever did, it was pretty funny. All right, let's go to, let's take another call. Calling from a 510 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Kenny from Berkeley, California. How you doing?
Kenny from Berkeley, California. What's happening?
Not much. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the infrastructure bill or plan. I don't even know if it's a bill yet. As I understand it, well, let me just throw you this. Do you remember Prop 22 from California that was voted on?
Very
in this
well.
last election cycle.
Yes, Prop 22.
Yeah,
Just to remind
with the-
people, it created basically a third class of workers in this country, where you were basically you don't get any of the protections, the labor protections or benefits that you get if you're an employee. It's a special category for essentially gig workers that really doesn't allow you anything other than allows you to work. It sort of basically takes the problem of misclassification, which is when you're paying workers that you have direct control over, and you're their primary source of revenue. You don't have to pay them Social Security. You don't have to pay workers' comp and this and that. And you use them as 1099s instead of W-2s. Now it just creates a third class of worker that you don't need to provide any of those benefits to, but you don't get in trouble from the government.
Right. It's absolutely terrible. Now, here's my point. Uber, Lyft, those companies that are ride share based, they're utilizing the roads more than you and me, or more than the average corporation for that matter.
Without a doubt.
So why don't we tax them more? I don't hear in progressive spheres anyone saying that we should be taxing these sorts of companies that are using the public infrastructure more than anyone else in order to pay for this. And I think that that's something that conservatives might actually be warm to. Maybe I'm maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but it seems like it would be a way to at least partially fund this.
I am down for that. I think, you could, I guess you could say like, there is a raise of corporate taxes that is already in the bill, right? And so you're saying, have an extra raise as opposed to the mileage tax that they proposed. Is that what you're saying?
Or just a mileage. Well, they're not even going to do the mileage tax. They backtracked on that. But
that was a horrible idea.
But what I think the caller, I'm so sorry. Oh, Kenny, what you're saying is like essentially a mileage tax for mega corporations like Uber and Lyft.
Yes, but go further. So I was driving to my grandparents' house over the weekend for Easter, and I was going down I-5, and I swear every second big rig had a big old Prime logo on the side of it. So tax Amazon for that shit too.
Yeah, I mean, I am certainly in favor of raising corporate taxes, and if there is a mechanism in which to ensure, I mean, the problem with like doing it with like Uber and Lyft, for instance, if it's based upon the amount of driving, they will pass that on some fashion to the drivers, right? They're non-employees now. But if you raise the corporate taxes, just broadly speaking, I mean, look, the vast majority of these corporations use our infrastructure or benefit from it financially, more than your average individual, right? I mean, they literally use this infrastructure to make money, and in a way that I think, your average person doesn't. So, but yeah, I think that's an opportunity. I don't have a sense of how much money you could raise on that. But I would be, and I don't know how you do that in a way that sort of prevents them from, because Uber, the whole trick with Uber, right, is that like we're not a driving company. We're a technology platform.
Well, they don't even have to pay for, unless there's some sort of, like a drunk girl vomits in the in the Uber, they don't have to pay for the cars. So they should have some sort of,
I guess my that would be my only concern, is just that they wouldn't necessarily be subject to that tax in that way. But I have no problem raising the taxes on them, period. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Emma, you did a great job last week hosting. It was really awesome. And you guys are doing great work. So
all right, thanks.
Please keep it up. Thanks.
Thanks for the call.
Thanks. That's a good idea, though.
TMBS is my jam. Sam, can I get a shofar in celebration of my 9th wedding anniversary? Also, do you know what looks good in gray? An African gray parrot adopted from an animal rescue group. Adopt, don't shop. Okay. Here's the shofar.
Right. Sam, famous, parrot aficionado.
I am not in the market for any type of bird. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, never got that. I don't want to offend any bird-owning viewers out there, but never got why people would want that.
This was actually an interesting exchange. It's fascinating what's happening here in terms of the sort of the attempts that then they're all on the same page about this, right? Like that somehow these corporations, and again, I all well and good. I'm not going to give a tremendous amount of credit to these corporations for actually responding to this stuff, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that we need to, keep in perspective as to why these corporations do it. It's really a reflection of what activists are doing on some level, and their fear of being on the wrong side of where ultimately history is going when you talk about the voting restrictions in Georgia. The right seems fixated. They're convinced that, and again, I guess they're also just playing to their own crowd, which is like, this is hypocritical. How can you move from Georgia to Colorado? They have deployed all of their resources to this. One of them, of course, is Peter Doocy, who is
the son of
Steve
Doocy. I saw them together at a Bernie rally. They were covering it, and they're in the press area. And I was like, man, they look alike.
But it's been interesting because it feels like Steve Doocy is just sort of like moderating himself as a little bit through and now his son is like attempting to be, I don't know, sort of.
Well, he's got
Asha.
Right, he's got to temper it because his son's now a part of it's a family business now. He can't go too far out there.
But Peter Doocy feels like he sees his path as to going down as to be like the next, I don't know, like Tucker Carlson type of guy. Like he's full on.
Well, he wants to be
Fox.
He's at the White House. He wants to be, like a correspondent, I guess, because that's very different than what his father does. And do not compare me.
But he has been, like, if you look at the questions he goes out and asks, they're all just less about getting an answer and more about just forwarding a right-wing meme. Here he is at the White House, and apparently Jen Psaki was anticipating something like this. She is the White House spokesperson. Here's Peter Doocy. Basically just trying to launder some ridiculous meme from the right.
Is the White House concerned that Major League Baseball is moving their All-Star game to Colorado, where voting regulations are very similar to Georgia?
Well, let me just refute the first point you made. First, let me say, on Colorado, Colorado allows you to register on Election Day. Colorado has voting by mail, where they send to 100% of people in the state who are eligible applications to vote by mail. 94% of people in Colorado voted by mail in the 2020 election. And they also allow for a range of materials to provide, even if they vote on Election Day, for the limited number of people who vote on Election Day. I think it's important to remember the context here. The Georgia legislation is built on a lie. There was no widespread fraud in the 2020 election. Georgia's top Republican election officials have acknowledged that repeatedly in interviews. And what there was, however, was record-setting turnout, especially by voters of color. So instead, what we're seeing here is for politicians who didn't like the outcome, they're not changing their policies to win more votes. They're changing the rules to exclude more voters. And we certainly see the circumstances as different. But ultimately, sorry, let me add one more thing. It's up to Major League Baseball to determine where they're holding their All-Star game.
Okay.
I think it's up to the Biden administration. I think he was intimately involved in that decision. Come
on, man, move the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Come on, Jack.
Top of his priority list, especially because we've talked about this on the show last week. Biden is very judicious about the social issues that he kind of weighs into. The women's soccer issue, for example, it's just so egregious. The women's soccer team is more successful, makes more money than the men's soccer team was actually in the World Cup, and they have extreme pay disparities. And he'll weigh in on that. He'll weigh in on something like this, but he's not overly focused on that. So anyway, but she was prepared for that because I didn't even realize this. According to information from the Secretary of State, 99.3% of Colorado primary voters used one of the methods, either a ballot drop box or a mail-in ballot, because they literally just send mail-in ballots to everybody in the state, pretty much.
What is amazing about this? And it is like it is. There's not a. I guess maybe the theory is it's going to sort of like rally Georgia Republicans in some way, but it's not. I don't think it's not going to backfire on people who want voting rights in Georgia. It's going to make that issue front. It's going to push that issue to the front even more so. In Colorado, I would imagine people are like, wait, what? These guys are just full of it. I mean, that's what I was saying. He's just trying to launder this.
Yeah.
Because what you're asking, like what the Biden administration is involving in the All-Star, what?
They picked this one thing, that Colorado has fewer days for in-person voting. But the thing they left out is that they basically allow en masse vote by mail and ballot drop boxes. And so the turnout's incredibly high. The lines are very short, as opposed to Georgia, in which you sometimes have to wait for like 9 hours in order to vote, which is by design. So it's just a whataboutism.
We got to save the Gutfield stuff. I mean, we will get there. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff. I think we have a new bailiwick, frankly.
It seems I forgot to tweet this last night, but I wanted to say it's like he's specifically designing his material to be covered on the Majority Report.
It's like the sunset on Dennis Miller and rises on Gutfeld.
Exactly, but we will wait to do that. Tucker Carlson had Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson on his program the other day. I don't know how sincere Asa Hutchinson is in his beliefs here that it is a horror show for government to get involved in between a doctor and a parents and their kids in terms of what kind of health care they are looking for in terms of dealing with, maybe an idea that they want to transition or they may want to transition later in life. I am old enough to remember when the Republicans had no problem trying to interfere between Terry Schiavo and her husband as he wanted to fulfill her wishes in unplugging her from life support when she became a vegetative state. The Republicans in the Senate, the U.S. Senate, tried to weigh in on this case that was happening in Florida. But here's Asa Hutchinson on Tucker Carlson's program. As you know, Hutchinson's veto of this basically medical care for kids who may or may not be trans, was overridden by the Arkansas state legislature. Here is Tucker Carlson.
In the most sensitive issues.
Why are we regulating the behavior of children at all if we're allowing children to decide? And by the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex. So there's a lot going on here.
I just have to say really quickly before, this isn't the kids making the decision. They can't make this decision on their own. They can't go to a doctor on their own and make this choice. The
parents have to sign off.
To sign off on it. So straw man from the beginning, per usual, with Tucker Carlson.
Go ahead.
So I just had to.
By the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex. So there's a lot going on here, but I'm asking as a conservative, you just invoked Ronald Reagan as if he were for chemical castration of children. What other behavior should we not use the power of the state to regulate among kids? Seriously.
Well,
why
you
can't they have
debate it
sex
every
at 15?
time. And so, look, Tucker, you want to keep talking, or you want me to answer a question? Tucker,
I sincerely want you to answer.
Well, thank you. And so whenever whether it's beer for minors, these are all issues that you have to address the legislature. You make judgment calls on it, but we also try to restrain ourselves as conservatives and say we don't have to be involved in every issue. And if you want to broaden the party, if you want to get back to the principles, then let's at least think through in a reasoned way as to whether this is the right bill to interfere with parents' and doctors' decisions on a healthcare matter, as you pointed out, does not have thorough research in every area. And so I yield to that.
But
and whenever you look at this bill, in my
yield
veto
to the lack of research. Really quick, 10 years ago, if somebody had said, hey, Asa Hutchinson, you're going to be governor of Arkansas, and you're going to veto a bill that would have protected children from chemical castration, what do you think you would have said?
Well, just like I said today, if you're talking about a reassignment surgery, I would have signed that bill in a minute. But whenever you're talking about maybe less than 200 kids in Arkansas that's currently on hormone treatment, and they are immediately cut off without having a grandfather clause in this legislation, I don't think that's treating those kids or their parents or their health care providers fairly or equally.
All right. That's the conservative position. Governor, thanks. I appreciate you coming on.
How smug that is. How smug that is.
Let me just make
Why did
another
Hutchinson
point
agree
here.
to go on to that show if he wanted to actually have a conversation about his decision?
I'm not going to try and get into the mind of that of Asa Hutchinson. I don't want to glorify that guy for doing something that is sort of just basic level humanity as far as I'm concerned in terms of vetoing that. But I just want to add, I haven't looked into that study that Carlson's talking about, and even if I give him the just give him the presumption that he's reading that study right, obviously, people who decide against taking hormone therapy will be more likely ultimately to be glad that they didn't take that, right? I mean, just if you are leaning towards, if you are deciding at that time and you do not have a deep, compelling belief that you want to do something and you don't do it, is it any surprise that 5 years later you're like, I actually made the right decision? I mean, the whole point is when you have, if a child and their parents decide that they want to take some type of hormone blockers or something to sort of delay their puberty because they have a deep abiding sense that they want to change the way that their gender is manifested, then of course it's more likely that they're making the right decision. I mean, it's just absurd.
I think what he's trying to, the figure, maybe we could listen to that again if there's a chance, but I think he's trying to say 90% of kids that use basic hormone blocking choose not to go through with gender reassignment surgery, which would, that's what I heard, and I could have misheard it because I don't listen to, whatever facts Tucker Carlson pretends to be espousing, but that also could make sense. I mean, one, the surgery to change your genitalia is do you want to play it?
Yeah, play it, Brendan.
We're allowing children to decide. And by the way, I read a study today that showed the overwhelming majority of kids who do not take life-altering hormones in the end decide not to, quote, transition to a new sex.
Pause it.
Okay, so no, you were right. I'm sorry. I misinterpreted it.
The overwhelming majority of children and parents who decide not to take the hormones do not transition. Well, I mean, of course.
Yeah, it's not saying anything at all.
No, of course.
Well, Asa Hutchinson, I would love to understand. I am curious about the decision to veto it because I didn't even realize this until the story came out yesterday that Arkansas has a simple majority veto. So it's not 2/3 or anything like that. You have to.
Oh, he can just show. I didn't realize
majority.
that either.
So
yeah.
that's why it was kind of a symbolic move. What does that symbolic move gain him politically?
I think he's probably. I mean, I imagine maybe he's thinking national politics.
Yeah. Brendan writes, amazing how much his tone and delivery carried that whole segment. Exactly. The smugness with which he said, apparently this is the conservative position, and just belittling Hutchinson's view on that point. I don't know.
I mean, it is, look, it is what Tucker's building there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it is part of what he's building. It is quite obvious. You can just put these pieces together and you can see it. We're going to have this sort of faux populism, and which is going to, but we're going to carry the torch for these completely irrelevant, in terms of the lives of everybody except for those children, issues, frankly. And that's just the way that it works with them. On the program today, no White Shirt Wednesday. Can't even watch this unrehearsed mess. Proud Boy, what happened to White Pride Worldwide Wednesdays? I was really into that. Kustupu, Sam, I think it would be great if you had an expert, possibly a trans person, on to explain the anti-trans legislation that we're seeing.
We did that last week.
Was that week? Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, we had the best, I would say.
Yes, the best of the best.
Shay Strangio was on from the ACLU.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody to check that out. Really, really well done. Well done saying it for us.
And follow Chase on Twitter, because very, very good feed to follow for these issues.
Yeah. Stover Picks, Broken Clock Wednesday. That should be the episode name. Decca, Tom Nelson saying that it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat should be a major red flag. Look, I think right now he is the most progressive guy in the race. That may change, and if it does, we will give some time for that person as well. I imagine he is running, and he is a county supervisor in a district, and I believe that went for Donald Trump. So I have a feeling, in Wisconsin, to win in Wisconsin may be a different calculation than others. But
and who cares if he says that? I mean, what he stands for is progressive. So that's what matters.
I do think that people I think it's fair enough to sort of hear something like that and say, this is something we've got to pay attention to. I think that's fair enough. But I also think that it can be overweight. You can provide too much weight for something like that. Not a bird. Sam, are you okay? You're very pale today. Yeah,
Jesus.
No,
I'm not noticing that.
Billiam, 12. Just a big old shout out to Nina Turner. She is one of the few people to really push me into politics. As a public educator who quit this year and is now working in the cannabis industry, scared for my profession. I knew in third grade I wanted to be a teacher, and because of disrespect shown by the administration, community, and students, also making $40K a year after 5 years and work stress didn't help. COVID put the nail in the coffin for me of this career, and I sadly left. Where does education go from here? Yeah, there needs to be just a massive influx, I think, of federal money into the education system, frankly. But thanks for all you guys do. You're the first show I've ever financially supported. You guys rock. Thank you. Appreciate it. Pat in Cleveland. Hey, Sam, thanks for having Nina Turner on your show. I'm a welder in Cleveland and would love to see a progressive representing Ohio, especially with how red the state has gotten. Indeed, mischievous. Isiah James' point that corporate Democrats are the same as Republicans is the definition of bad faith. Isn't there a bigger issue?
I don't remember him saying that.
I mean, I think, look, there are, when Joe Manchin comes out there, and I don't know if but there are, I think when you come to certain issues, there are Democrats who, particularly in a state like New York, the Republicans that represent New York City, let's say, and that represent, that if you get corporate Democrats, there are some that are very, very problematic, and particularly when it comes to things like housing. That's just the reality.
Just owned by real estate, right? Like the same way Republicans are owned by fossil fuels.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know that he's saying that across the board in terms of every issue, but in terms of when you talk about these housing issues, and I think I think he's also talking about running in a primary, and I think that's also relevant. I mean, look, obviously, the guy is running as a Democrat, so I don't think you should. I don't think that's bad faith. I really don't.
Especially just given all of the excellent rhetoric he had on other issues. I think take the bulk of that, and you can take issue with the comment, but that's a tiny grain of sand.
This is, and understand, this is a Democratic district. This is not
You mean Brooklyn?
Yes.
I'm joking.
Well, but I mean, I'm saying what we're talking about in terms of there is no sort of like, will the Republican win here? This is a Democratic
I don't
district.
think they're running a Republican.
It's very.
I'm like I went in looking at the candidates before the show. I'm 90% sure that's the case.
Worcestershire. Can you give us a sense of how the New York mayoral race is going? Probably not well, but to be honest with you, I don't know. I mean,
it's ranked choice voting happening in June. Andrew Yang is the front runner somehow. Did he create some sort of alliance with Maya
Wiley?
Wiley?
Did he?
All right, see, this is I'm talking out of my ass here.
All right.
Oh no, she didn't. No, so I'm sorry.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Impignorante. Last week, Matt said gun control is not his top priority. Where do you land? America is the home of mass shootings. I mean, I think, is gun control the first thing I vote, first issue I vote on? No, it's not. It's not. I wouldn't say it's not my top priority. No. I mean, I think, frankly, that's true of the vast majority of Americans. That is exactly why you see 70, 80% of Americans say, yes, I am for some form of gun control. I would have no problem getting rid of all, weapons that aren't explicitly for hunting. Period. End of story. And, but is it my top priority? No. Things like single payer healthcare, things like.
Is that what you say is your top priority? I would say single payer healthcare is probably mine if I were to pick.
Yeah, I would say that. I think ensuring that every person has healthcare in this country that is free at the point of service, I think would have really broad implications for our society, decommodifying healthcare. And then I would probably go to somewhere about like, universal pre-K and daycare. I'm not ranking these, but it would be in there. And then I would...
Green New Deal for me, at least.
And obviously addressing climate change.
And campaign finance reform.
Campaign finance reform, I think, is like... that is not as high for me. Green New Deal or addressing climate change in some fashion. Green New Deal is really our best option at this point. But I would decommodify a bunch of these things. And then I think a lot of that stuff gets easier, frankly. Or I would nationalize certain things.
I was kind of ranking it in my mind in terms of single payer, Green New Deal, and then probably campaign finance reform for me.
Nudustrian. Day 8 of Derek Chauvin trial seems like all the BLM protests were for absolutely nothing.
I don't know why that means that.
I'm not. You're not going to see a trial. This is running on a sort of separate track from what BLM is like. I think.
Yeah, the goals of BLM are much broader than a single cop getting sent to prison. Right, like it's all about all the defund and reapportionment of that budget to something that actually does good for the community.
And in terms of the status of the case, let me just say, there were two things that the defense was pushing. One was that Chauvin was using best practices in some instance, or what he was trained to do when he knelt on Floyd's neck, which has already been knocked down by his supervisor. And then two is just they're hanging on, Floyd was a drug addict and that's why he passed away. And there are two experts that like from one expert from one side that says this, another expert on the other side. Just to me, like the two underpinnings of what the defense was using, one of them is already gone, and we're only a week in. So I don't see it as actually being a negative in any way to the Black Lives Matter movement, because I think the prosecution's doing a decent job as of this moment.
Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. Nina Turner is a superhero. I'll never forget her calling Bloomberg an oligarch on MSNBC with Chris Matthews and refusing to back down when Jason Johnson went after her for it. All three candidates were awesome. Thanks for having them on. Nude Wrangler. Why did you not wear white today, Sam? Are you trying to cancel culture white? 10 lawn gnomes. Emma remembered. On Wednesdays, you wear pink.
Oh, that's a great reference.
I don't even know what that is.
You're too old.
This is one of the last references Sam would ever get.
Yeah, it's like at the very end. And by the way, Sam, literally everybody my age would get that reference.
What is it?
It's a Mean Girls reference from the movie Mean Girls, starring Lindsay Lohan, written by Tina Fey. Are you serious? Are you serious?
No, of course not. I know that movie. Mean Girls by Lindsay Lohan. She was in it.
Yeah, by her.
She was...
Sam, like...
Rachel McAdams.
Rachel McAdams.
Right,
Yeah,
if I remember correctly, Rachel McAdams was in that.
Right?
Yeah,
I don't know why we're giving you the answers. That's actually crazy.
Tina Fey did that movie.
Stop it. Mila has seen that movie definitely you should.
Mila's undoubtedly watched that movie.
It's like, I think, it's like one of the biggest cultural like movies for my cohort.
All right.
Wow.
Be like Mike. Do you know how to cook, Sam? I've heard you speak about ordering Chinese, but I've never heard you talk about cooking, excluding prearranged ingredients delivered to your house. No, I mean, I know how to cook some. Like I'll cook,
What's your specialty?
Well, I don't have a specialty per se, but I'll cook, I can cook like a chicken thighs, or, I can make a pizza. Sure. Yeah, no, I can cook.
You like thighs, not breast? Never mind. I meant a chicken, but I just don't even want to.
Morella 622. We all look pale during the pandemic, right? Okay, Jessica Fofe. Hello, somebody. Gary Chambers. Token sports question. Token sport adjacent question. Okay. Who's worse, Kurt Schilling or Aubrey Huff? On a similar track, seems like everyone I turn on sports talk radio in New York City, some knucklehead, Boomer Esiason in particular, whining about how New York State's high taxes prevent city teams from signing players. I wish I could hear him be schooled by someone who knows what about tax policy and functionality of the state.
Honestly, Boomer's not even like, there are so many worse New York talk radio hosts than Boomer Esiason. But yes, I've actually heard him whine about them before too. Like what's his co-host's name? Boomer and Gio. Gio's worse than Boomer. It's New York talk radio. There's going to be right-wing perspectives on there. Mike Francesa's on there. My personal least favorite is Anita Marks. I almost said Anita Hill.
That would have been weird. Calling from an 814 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, also Kurt Schilling is worse.
Hello? 814. Hello? Who's this?
Yes, that's me. My name's Margaret. I'm calling from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Hi, Margaret. Welcome to the program. What's on your mind?
Well, I just also wanted to say I really enjoy Emma. Doing a great job.
Thank you, Margaret.
You're welcome. I've been calling because I've been trying to call for a while now because I belong to something called the National Infrastructure Bank Coalition. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I think I have, but go ahead.
Well, it's a grassroots coalition, and I'm working with a team of people talking to state legislators in Pennsylvania. But the coalition is all over the states trying to get an endorsement for this bill. Last year, they actually introduced a bill, H.R. 6422. And what it is, it's a infrastructure bank that's based on the 4 infrastructure banks that we had in the past. First one was Alexander Hamilton. Last one would be the Reconstruction Finance Corporation during FDR. And what it is the bank would be funded by treasury bonds. And it would be able to be, and it would be a depository bank, so it would be able to access money from the Fed, which is, I think right now the interest rate is 0.25%. And then it could give out loans to municipalities and states to work on infrastructure. You know, the states and municipalities can't borrow money from the Fed, so this would act as an intermediary. The details are, in order to understand it in any depth, you'd have to go to their website. So I'd like to be able to give that to you now and invite your viewers to check it out. It's nibcoalition.com.
nibcoalition.com.
Yes.
I will check that out. That sounds interesting.
Yeah. And the woman in charge of it, her name is Alfeka Mutardi, and she's a macroeconomist who was with the IMF for 25 years. So she knows what she's talking about. And she's kind of spearheading the coalition, and I think she'd make a great guest.
That sounds interesting. We'll definitely look into that. Thank you so much, Margaret. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Margaret.
You betcha.
All right.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Let's take one more phone call, and then we'll get to the calling from a 443 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 443. 443 going once. You are gone. 443. 214. Calling from a 214 area code. 214.
Is this me?
Yes, it is.
Hi. Just want to, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
You're doing fine.
Hey, Emma. Hey, Sam. How is everyone?
Hey.
So I just had a quick question.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Oh, sorry. This is Cameron from Texas.
Cameron from Texas.
Yes. Just wanted to get y'all's thoughts. What would be like, I guess, how should the left address, because something I've noticed with some of my more like liberal friends who, not lefties by any means, even they recognize like the Supreme Court is, like completely fucked, where, just how the Republicans have treated it. They recognize that the Republican Party is, constitutionally, anti-democratic.
Right.
But you look at like centrist candidates and how like they don't recognize that. So like the politicians will say like, they pay lots of lip service. Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, they'll say we need a Republican Party.
Right.
But you have like liberal voters who aren't even lefties who are like, actually, you know what? I don't like these Republicans. And so I just wonder how like leftists can like play on that, because liberal voters see the issues, but like centrist, more mainstream Democratic politicians don't, feed that. They still get votes anyway.
Right, but I don't understand. Like, so what do you? I think like from the politician's perspective, they're not going to be penalized by your friends, that cohort, if they say that, right? Like, we're obviously like people who listen to this program are sensitive to it. They picked up on Nelson saying, Democrat, Republican doesn't matter, blah blah blah. But the fact of the matter is that your average, liberal voter, they're not going to penalize somebody for saying that. They may disagree,
right,
but they're not going to penalize the politician for that. And
I meant more, how can the left push them to penalize them? Like, cause they recognize that's an issue.
Well, I am less concerned with the rhetoric than I would be, what it leads them to. For instance, it appears that Joe Biden is, and we just saw Chuck Schumer got the parliamentarian to basically say there's going to be multiple, there's ways of getting multiple bills through reconciliation. I think there should be the removal of the filibuster, but it doesn't bother me that Joe Biden says, I want to open up this process to Republicans, invites 20 of them over there, says the Republican Party is really important, has them come to the White House. They realize they can't agree on anything, and then they start the reconciliation process. I'm fine with that. I don't care. You know, if they need to, if Joe Biden needs to say that to make him feel comfortable going forward and doing it without the Republicans, then okay. You know what I mean? Like, I'm more interested in, you know, how much they believe it. If they believe,
I would push back a little bit on that, though, Sam.
Go ahead.
I would say it's not just rhetoric; it's also actions. Those are good examples in the opposite. But I would point out to sometimes in actions where more centrist Democratic candidates, they say they're for things, but then have no intention of holding back on them. Like, what's a policy? I guess.
Well, but anybody can lie. My point is that happens all the time. You know, like it's you know, we saw this with card check 8 years ago, whatever, 12 years ago. You know, the Democrats pretended like they were going to pass card check when they got in. They didn't do it. It just wasn't a priority. I don't even know how much they're really wedded to this HR1, to be honest with you, at this point. And yeah, I mean, it's nuts. But yes, I'm against people lying when they're lying in a way that they're not going to do what I want them to do. I am okay with politicians lying, or at least, you know, projecting an image of bipartisanship if they're actually like, it's just cover. I mean, well,
the Republicans did it constantly.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I just like, the rhetoric is important in, you know, to some degree, because it gives you an indication of what they are thinking, but it only gives you some indication. At the end of the day, yes, their actions are what matter. And so, yes, if somebody says I'm for the minimum wage, but votes against it, then I don't care that they said they're for the minimum wage.
Yeah, I mean, and whenever they do this, you know, nods towards bipartisanship, it's a propaganda opportunity for a leftist to say, look at these people not taking these fascists seriously, right? And I think it already serves as that, to be honest. I think a lot of people are like far left because they understand how far right the GOP is, and that's one of their frustrations with the Democratic Party. I think that already is operating in the left.
Is that what you're talking about? How you leverage, like how you get people, you know, like to become more, I guess, to the left by getting them frustrated about that?
Right, because that's what happened to me. I mean, in 2016, I mean, I couldn't vote, but I was like, oh, well, you know, Bernie has some nice ideas, but Hillary, she's more electable. But then seeing how ineffectual that, like, the more mainstream part of the Democratic Party was, I got radicalized very quickly and became a lefty. But then it's like, I don't see other people moving, even though their values aren't there with the Democratic Party. They're still very comfortable being like, oh, well, you know, Democrats are generally good. Like the last caller about the, or the candidates you had on about how Democrats in New York, they're bought by the housing industry. You know, they'll say like, oh, well, I want these things, but then they don't. And then their voters aren't sensitive to them shifting on those issues.
Well, I think the first step you take is that there are good Democrats and bad Democrats, right? I mean, that's basically what happened to you, right? I mean, like if you accept the idea that there are good and bad Democrats, then it's much easier to push people to the left, because then there's a, you know, as opposed to like all Democrats good. They will demand more of those Democrats, and they will try and leverage against those Democrats. And if they have a choice between two of those Democrats, they will go with the better Democrat.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to hear some of y'all's thoughts. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the call. I'm not sure I fully understood at the beginning what he was trying to say, but
I think he's just got to have a little bit more faith that other people are making the journey that he did, because I think that is happening. I mean that's happened for, I think probably, like I remember climate change, right? Like just the Republican stance on climate change was probably one of the early radicalizing things, along with the Iraq War for me.
Well, that is, yeah, same here.
All right.
And it wasn't that the Democrats had a great position on it.
No, they just weren't maniacally wrong and lying to us on a habitual basis.
Right. Well, some. But some. But here is, boy, this is really. I don't know how to introduce this, but except for basically mention what I tweeted about this. There are some things that are so bad they are good, right?
Right, like Sharknado.
Yeah, Sharknado. I mean, there's been all sorts of things like this that you laugh at because they're so bad that they're actually funny.
The Room, starring Tommy Wiseau, right?
There you go.
Right.
Well, it turns out Greg Gutfeld's show, Feld.
Yeah.
Greg Gutfeld's
you
show.
You said Field earlier, but then you got it.
Greg Gutfeld's show is not one of those things. It's actually worse than that. And here is, let's start with this. This is, I don't know, which is worse?
The monologue?
The monologue is really bad, but that's not even like...
The monologue is gargantuan as well. It's a monolith.
Really long. Let's play this clip. This is a sketch that they came up with. Now, here's the thing. Look, we do stuff on this show all the time that's not funny. And there are times even when we're trying to be funny and it's not that funny. Understand that Greg Gutfeld has at least 2 or 3 or 4, maybe more writers who are paid money to write comedy every day. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do. I know it is. And in fact, on some level, one of the reasons why we don't attempt to do sketches or anything like that on this show ever, even when Michael was here, was because it's hard to do. And there's nothing worse than attempting it and failing and having to broadcast it to never mind tens of thousands of people on YouTube. I'd Jesus, 20, like hundreds of thousands of people. I honestly, I would have to go out and bury myself somewhere. Now, I'm sure Greg does that too. I'm sure he goes home to his house on Long Island and he buries himself in a pile of money. So that might help. But man, oh man, if I had to watch this and knew I was associated with it, boy, oh boy.
Drugs for you.
Oh God, yeah. No, I would be, forget
of drugs.
It. Here is Gutfeld. That's the way I say the show. Gutfeld, because it's got an exclamation point, debuting a new sketch called ATN. What does that stand for? All Trump News Network. Here he is.
Buckets are having a hard time drying out from the Trump era, even though they can call it a day at 4:30 in the afternoon while President Biden's digesting his early bird tapioca. It's almost like they'll find a Trump connection to any news item out there. And one network is cornering the market.
You're watching ATN, all Trump news, because everything else is boring by comparison.
Pause it. Now, you've basically said that the thing that's so bad about news out there is that they'll try and jam in Trump into everything, right? Mm-hmm. So why not just play clips from those news networks doing it?
Do it like a Daily Show thing.
Right. But the problem is that his premise is sort of wrong. And because they're not doing that really, so they make up their own straw man. This is sort of like when a stand-up comedian would put on a funny shirt and then walk out there and go hey, but I know what you're thinking. What's with that shirt?
Yeah, it's got a butt on it. It's giving me 2 middle fingers or giving you, right? That's funny, dude.
It's dude, nobody forced, you didn't get knocked out and someone put that shirt on you. You decided to wear that shirt. So why is that funny? But go ahead.
By comparison.
I'm Anderson Lemon with the headlines. The annual Global Retirement Index is out with its latest.
Anderson Lemon.
Anderson Lemon.
Get it?
It's a combination.
Pick a male
of
actor.
Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon.
Yeah, no, I know.
They combined the two guys from CMI.
Whoa, that is hilarious.
Keep playing.
I'm Anderson Lemon with the headlines. The annual Global Retirement Index is out with its latest list of the best places in the world to spend your golden years. Topping the list this year, Costa Rica, followed by Panama and Mexico. Sources say if Trump is elected in 2024, we can expect all Americans to retire and move to literally any country where Trump is not president. And I'll be on the first plane to Bermuda with a suitcase full of edibles. Police in Georgia say a weekend traffic jam was caused by a loose cow running along Interstate 285.
What is the edibles comment?
Yeah, because you're smoking pot if you don't like Trump, except for you're eating
Right, but
it.
she says that your golden years. So are these like are all of the people that consume CNN, 60-year-old hippies who still smoke pot and want to retire to a country where Trump isn't president, which is the United States?
It's just a series of non sequiturs, this thing, done by like somebody who can't even do a parody of a freaking news. Like this is like the lowest hanging fruit where this is a non-union gig. Go ahead.
Case full of edibles. Police in Georgia say a weekend traffic jam was caused by a loose cow running along Interstate 285 near Atlanta, possibly spooked by a phone call from Donald Trump. Cars were at a standstill for about an hour until police were able to safely capture the cow and return it to its owner. Sources say this never would have happened if Donald Trump had an infrastructure plan that consisted of more than just turning wayward cattle into well-done steak.
Perhaps a fair point.
That's the best.
Did anybody in the writer's room go like, the infrastructure plan turned the wayward cattle into steak? And I get it. Like, what? Did anybody?
Writer's room?
Oh my God. Continue. This is just, honestly, this is like.
I have like a weird amount of sympathy for the woman in this.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you know, Anderson Lemon.
Yeah, that's.
I just see her credit.
Because I go by Andy.
That would actually be better if it was actually her real name. Then I would be like, oh, well, okay, go ahead.
I swear, I do not know how we ever survived that guy. And a new study shows that people cannot tell the difference between screams of joy and screams of terror. Researchers at Emory University say the two types of screams have similar acoustics. For example, if I attended a Sugar Ray concert in the 90s, sheer joy. Whereas if I attended a Trump rally, unmitigated terror. Thank God I'll never have to see those again. I mean, all those happy people with the flags and the children and the grandparents and the YMCA. Makes me sick to my stomach.
Got him.
Sugar Ray? There aren't really a lot of connecting lines with the cultural.
I mean, the whole. Honestly, like I feel when I watch that, I feel like what I feel like a 5-year-old must feel like when they're looking at some type of intricate machine. Like, how does this work? Like, how is this built? Like, I just this is. I look at this, it's almost like Stonehenge. Like, how did it get here?
Yeah.
What could have possibly happened?
What mystical forces created this
What were they
television show?
thinking?
Yeah.
How did they move those big rocks? Like, I don't understand how you go from a blank piece of paper to actually hiring and producing that. I mean, to do and then airing it. There's nobody to go like, hey guys, seriously? I mean,
and it's like the jokes, they weren't enough about Trump. Do you know what I mean? If it's about all Trump news network, it doesn't resemble anything I've seen on CNN, and it's not enough about Trump to fit the initial.
Right. Like, what was the thing about people can't tell the difference between screams? Like, I don't know what those premises are. Like, why are you introducing that? It sounds like a weird consent joke, actually, that somebody's setting up and they just crowbarred into this Trump segment.
Right. It's like we're gonna do like this is their. I guess the idea, like the premise was like they're trying to fit Trump into every story.
Because CNN covers scream differences.
And the
all
cow
the time.
I mean, I guess that's the idea. Like, let's just come up with the dumbest stories, and then they'll shoehorn Trump into them.
Like, the way to do it would be to cover Biden like falling down the stairs and then say like, this is about Trump, and like things that CNN would actually cover.
Right.
Connect it to national issues. CNN isn't covering screams or cows on the road.
You could do the thing where Biden slips, because they want to play that over and over again. Biden slips. And of course, the reason why he slipped was because Donald Trump removed, carpet, or you do something, you stick in, you blame Donald Trump for that.
Yeah, Trump's, opening the door to the migrants on the border now, but whatever. Like,
I guess you're basically doing thanks, Obama. But you do it for Trump.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they would have to be
Maybe they'll get to that by, next week. It's the second show.
That is, let's play, let's play part of this Greg Gutfeld opening monologue. It is 5.5 minutes, which it occurs to me, the reason why it was so long is because I suspect they had to cut other sketches that were like beyond unfunny. But this is, I remember when I would do stand-up, particularly early on, you go to, you do an open mics, but sometimes you'd get like, a room that was full, and there were times where you would have someone up there who was so bad that it would feel like somebody had released some type of gas in the room, and everybody was starting to get like woozy. And it was like there was a weird feeling of just sort of like creepiness.
Tenseness, too, that no one's laughing. Yeah.
And it's just like everybody's just sort of like a little bit dizzy, and you're starting to watch the person on stage just get a little bit like shaky. And it really is an amazing feeling. Like, I feel like I want to try and get tickets to the Greg Gutfeld show, because I feel like that feeling exists. Here is a moment where the audience is just like, wait, isn't this supposed to be funny? And he sort of knows it's not doing well, but he's going to blow through it. And here is just play, I don't know, we'll play a minute or two of it.
Yes. Day 2. From Hotlanta to Notlanta. Once the media decided the Georgia voting bill was evil by demanding the same steps you'd need to get a library card, what did Major League Baseball do? They moved the game from Atlanta, which is 51% black, to Denver, which is 76% white. What were they smoking?
Pause it for 1 second.
Well, it is Colorado.
Pause it for 1 second. What's also amazing
I just got
is
the chills.
What's also amazing is like how understood it is that by them, they don't even have to state the premise, right? They immediately just go into the supposed relative black proportions of the cities. Mm-hmm. But all he's brought up is the voting legislation. Like, he has already basically accepted the premise that, like, this is, because for you to actually think that it's hypocritical, you also have to believe that this voting law targets black people, which it does, but they're accepting that premise. Let's just go ahead. I just found that fascinating.
Yeah.
Black, to Denver, which is 76% white. What were they smoking? Well, it is Colorado, so maybe weed. Because you got to be mile high to think this was a solution. For a number of reasons that aren't Colorado's fault. It's just that in this new woke world, skin color is everything. So to help black people, MLB moved the game to Denver, which is wider than the slopes in Aspen, and made sure black-owned businesses in Atlanta just lost millions in profit. Like most woke policies, they make the folks in charge feel good while harming the people they insist they're helping. Judging by this logic, I wouldn't be surprised if Senator Byrd's grandson threw out the first pitch. All of this stinks because it makes assumptions about black lives that smacks of condescension. And it's blacks who must bear the consequences, not the white CEOs. But if the new Georgia bill is truly Jim Crow on steroids and possibly growth hormone given Major League Baseball's history, Colorado requires voter ID to vote in person. And at Coors Field, you need to show ID to pick up your tickets, which by the activist media standards is definitely racist. Yes, in this new upside-down world, it's racist to assume blacks have IDs, and it's not.
Pause it. Now, this is what I'm finding fascinating about Gutfield. The more he's trying to get something to come off as funny, the more he turns his face and talks like this. Are you noticing this?
He's also he's a leaner.
I understand that. I don't sit well, but like he is turning his face like this, and
he's got a fish hook.
I could just go back a little bit. Watch it. Go back a little bit. Like, watch. What? Look what's happening. He's talking out of the side of his mouth more to show my tongue is in my cheek. It is all supposed to be funny, folks. All right, go with sound. Go with sound.
At all, but using this story to redefine once again what racism is. And it's everything except being a Democrat, the party of Jim Crow, the KKK, and slavery. I'm just curious, who doesn't have an ID? And if the person doesn't have an ID, don't you think voting isn't really a primary concern? Given that it's impossible to rent an apartment, get a bank account, or sign up for my new newsletter on the benefits of gold and silver. You know, now has never been a better time. But just to show you how absurd this is, Colorado actually offers 2 fewer days of early voting than Georgia. The good news, Stacey Abrams now claims she's the governor of Colorado. We went to CNN for comment.
This is the most racist panel I have ever been on.
Racist,
you two are racist, like
racist, white male baseball, racist, racist, very racist, disgusting racist.
They couldn't get any black people for that.
Anymore. And over at MSNBC, what does Brian Williams have to say about all this?
What?
I am the greatest professional baseball player that has ever lived. When I hit...
They're doing the same jokes in this monologue that they did in the opening episode. They did the Brian Williams bit, except he was on Mars. And then the racist CNN thing.
They played so well yesterday. Like, oh, God damn it, we need another couple of minutes, guys. We had to cut the, everything's rushed, everything's Donald Trump sketch down a little bit because we couldn't get funny stuff. Let's just run the 2 jokes that we did last night. We can change the words around.
Come on. That's a callback. That's a classic comedic trope.
Yeah, playing the hit.
Should we just play a little bit more? This is pretty good.
It's like Conan with the masturbating bear with the Brian Williams.
Exactly. But the thing is, in 2021, you can just do it the second day you run the show.
Yeah, right. I didn't realize that you were able to recycle jokes in the second episode of your show ever because it's like you're building a rapport with your audience, right? They'll recognize that sketch.
To be fair, they also might know that this is not going to be around for very long, so they may want to get their callbacks in quick.
Right. This is material for the writer's reel.
5 home runs in Game 7 of the World Series. It didn't feel nearly as magical as the time I hit 7 home runs in Game 5 of the NBA Championship. And I was buck naked, riding a Clydesdale horse given to me by my good friend Barack Hussein Obama, if that is his real name.
Meanwhile, more cowardly companies like United, who never ask for ID when you're checking in, are jumping on the woke wagon claiming the Georgia bill is evil. What? So how do you deal with this new corporate wokeism? A tiny band of activists have these companies terrified. So I say, why not egg it on? What about corporate reparations for diabetics from Coca-Cola? Their products have caused more sugar shock than movies on the Hallmark Channel.
Yes, please.
Delta. Why can't blacks fly for free or at a steep discount to make up for centuries of oppression? Okay. People say world travel is the best education. So, Delta, are you against educating minority children? And what about you, MLB? Up until the 60s, your league was whiter than an episode of Friends. Have you paid enough for your decades of segregation, keeping amazing players like Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson out of your league? If it costs over
Josh Gibson?
Did he say that United doesn't require ID?
No, he was being facetious.
I don't. But like, what's the joke?
They require ID. They're upset about the voting requirements
right.
for ID in Georgia.
Because you need an ID to get on a plane. So he really got him.
Because as
$100.
It's exactly the same situation. You would have the requirements of why you would need an ID on a plane are exactly the same as to why you would need them for voting. It's just absurd. And of course, we know that one of the fundamental rights that you have as an American to maintain a democracy is to fly on a plane.
Yes, enshrined in the Constitution.
A family afford to watch a game. Who has a harder time affording that? Minority families. It's time for the Affordable Ticket Act, the ATA. If you don't like your seat, you don't have to keep your seat. It's like affordable housing, but it takes place in luxury boxes. Who's with me on this? Joe, what do you think?
Look. The important thing is,
oh no,
we're gonna play the game. Right? This is the all-star game. This is the best players from every team. Reggie Jackson, Nolan Ryan.
Oh, he's old.
Kevin Costner, they're all there. And I'm going to be watching. We got to follow the rules. Come on, man. This isn't politics. All right? If we all do our part, we can all be watching the Super Bowl together on Labor Day, Memorial Day. One of the days.
So, all you woke companies, if bogus claims of racism are now your all-star players, maybe treat them like starting pitchers and give them a few days rest.
Pictures?
Starting pictures.
Well, we all
guy.
mispronounce guys.
That Biden impression is
poor
Bush.
Tom Shalhoub. I tried to get him on. I knew him from back in the comedy days, and years ago I tried to get him on a show. He was desperately trying to get the host of Red Eye, and I was like, dude, come on my show, and he ended up becoming the host of Red Eye, didn't he? After.
Oh yeah.
Impression was shit, and it sounded like George W. Bush. In case people didn't hear me, just listen to it again. Again, Gutfeld! Exclamation point. More like Gutfeld? Question mark.
Yeah, exactly.
This is going to be a great cultural artifact in about
is he
2
nightly?
months. Yeah.
It's nightly.
Yeah, there's no way they're going to be able to keep up this production cycle with like no union writers, no union actors, just like killing those 3 people that said you're racist are going to be on the show every night.
That's the writing staff. There's no doubt.
Yes.
I mean, they have 4 people writing. Shalhoub's probably one of the writers too. That's the writing staff.
Why didn't they just do it when John Oliver runs? Like, that's clearly the kind of thing that they're trying to do. Once on Sunday, they would have been able to have a whole week to think of material, and then on the second night, they wouldn't have to do callbacks.
They're going to go back. The show is just going to turn into like a panel show. They'll go back to Red Eye. I mean, this is just absurd.
And
I hope that someone is recording the writers' room meetings just so that we can have that as like a thing afterwards. I'd love to listen.
Let's just remind people the last attempt that Fox had in doing a comedy show was the half-hour news hour, I think it was, which I think they stole from John Benjamin. Had a half-hour news network at Comedy Central. But whatever, here it is. And they opened it up, the first one. They wanted to do like a live from New York type of thing, sort of an SNL type of thing. They opened up and they got Rush Limbaugh to open up I think this was their debut show, and then with a special guest from another really funny conservative. Here it is. This is from the half-hour news hour.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
My fellow Americans, good evening.
Already
With
funny.
last fall's bitter recount behind us, my Democratic opponent, Howard Dean, finally getting the medical attention he has so desperately needed for so long. We move forward as a nation. Some say is more divided than ever before. As president, I hereby promise you, the American people, 4 years or more of Commander-in-Chief excellence. Not a moment too soon. After just 2 years of a Democrat Congress, America's international reputation is a shambles. Our economy teeters on the brink of collapse. And Cindy Sheehan's cross-country shooting spree, still fresh in our memories. Still, be of good cheer, my friends. America's best days are still ahead of her now that the grown-ups are back in charge. Yes, Rosemary.
Mr. President, the Vice President is here.
Oh, great. Send the Vice President in, please.
Mr. President?
Madam Vice President, welcome to the Oval Office.
The two biggest laughs have been reveals so far.
Thank you.
You, like to join me in a cigar?
Isn't the White House a smoke-free zone?
Not anymore. Yes, Rosemary.
Mr. President, Nancy Pelosi on line 1.
Pelosi? How did she get this number? Well, take a message. And now, my fellow Americans, stay tuned to the half-hour news hour coming up next right here on the Fox News Channel.
And if you don't, we'll invade your countries, kill your leaders, and convert you to Christianity.
Easy, Madam Vice President. Good night. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. And
Way better already. That's way better.
The production value was a little better, but that was a weekly show, I think. I don't think that was on every night.
And it wasn't live. They pre-recorded that.
Oh,
Clearly.
yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That's maybe the key for
wow.
Gutfeld.
Gutfeld. So glad. So happy that Gutfeld is here. All right. One more phone call, then we got to get out of here. Calling from a 323 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Up. 323 is gone. So we get one more bite at the apple, ladies and gentlemen. There we go. A lot of people have been holding on for a long time. Calling from an 816 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, everyone. This is Jake from Kansas City.
Did you call me Ron?
No, I said to everyone.
Okay. Hey, all right, sorry.
that's
Jake,
okay.
Jake from Kansas City. What's on your?
You can call
mind?
him Ron if you want.
If you feel more comfortable.
Okay, sure, V. So I'm here in Kansas City and just got a tattoo. It's pretty sweet.
Congratulations.
And yeah, that's my first one. Thanks. Well, the thing is, my tattoo artist is really good at his tattooing, but kind of had some bad politics, and you don't want to really
tattoo artists with bad politics. The joke is that they're often sorry, keep going.
Is that really because I was telling them about how I got vaccinated and everything with my first Pfizer vaccine, and that's great. And he's going on about, well, I don't want to put that in me and whatnot. I don't know what that is.
Dude, first off, as soon as you said you went and got a tattoo during a pandemic, my first reaction was like, you got a tattoo during a pandemic? And now if you're telling me that you went to a guy who was skeptical about COVID, I got to say, I'm not just questioning his judgment. I'm questioning your judgment.
It's not. Well, I mean, I got vaccinated. Doesn't that help a bit?
You've got one. You have one vaccine. You got shot how long ago?
First vaccine a couple of weeks ago.
Well, all right. I mean,
you
you're
got
up
a good
there.
amount
You're
of
up there.
protection.
I mean, I personally, like, it's going to be a little bit of time before I go into a sort of a closed area where someone has to actually like physically touch me throughout the entire process and breathe in my face.
You're fine, dude. It's okay.
But okay.
You're fine.
Does he believe in like sanitizing his instruments too? Like, will he use any type of like rubbing alcohol and the stuff, or is he just like, I'm not going to go? That's
honestly, it seemed like he was making, and all the other tattooers were making kind of side comments of like how some people overreact about certain sanitizing things, and I don't know. That's not the point. The point is, it was what we were watching while I was getting the tattoo. He's going off about how it's all part of, a profit incentive and big pharma trying to make $1 out of ore plight and whatnot. And, to some extent, there's some truth to that. But
of course.
Then he brings up a Joe Rogan episode, and that's what we're watching the whole time. And it's just kind of like, I'm getting but Joe Rogan's cool. How
he's what?
People. Well, he's got more followers than you.
Okay.
That's Worthington's law.
Okay. All right. Yep. All right. So Joe Rogan's cool, and
so does Geraldo.
The only non-cool part about it is he's telling your tattoo artist that shouldn't take this whole thing too seriously.
You're saying that I shouldn't have said
No.
anything.
I'm saying that 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 Joe Rogan is cool, except for the part where he's telling your tattoo parlor guy, your tattoo artist, to not take the pandemic so seriously.
I never told him to not do that.
I'm saying
I didn't say
Joe
anything.
Rogan, who you say is cool, who you're watching in the studio.
Right.
The part about Joe Rogan that's not so cool is the fact that Joe Rogan has told your tattoo artist not to take the pandemic too seriously.
Right. Well, there was that kind of subtle assumption that I was getting from what Joe Rogan was saying and whatnot. And
Did you say Joe Rogan's cool, or is that what the tattoo artist was saying
No, I
to
don't.
you?
I can't stand Joe Rogan. It's boring.
Yes, that's
Okay, I see.
I'm not good at communicating. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. That's okay.
So, anyhow, I mean, but this is kind of what I wanted to ask you guys. Is just no, he's more popular than what. There's a huge factor of people just.
Joe Rogan's
following
huge.
like this sort of what?
He's hugely popular. Yes.
Right. And I don't know. Like, I just came back to the country a few months ago, and to me it just seems like why is it that so many people are just okay? Like, it's just cool to not take vaccines seriously. It's not cool to, I don't know, take any, or it's like not cool to be political per se or whatnot. And maybe that's kind of where this is all coming from. Like, Joe Rogan makes the political element seem non-political, and
That's a good
therefore
point.
it's cool. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's well said.
And one of the big criticisms I think that we've had over the years of Joe Rogan is that there is a certain depoliticization about stuff. Brendan's saying that's Generation X, and maybe it is to a certain extent.
I mean, it's a weird depoliticization that will have, like, you, for instance, listen to 3 hours of Douglas Murray talk about Western civilization being threatened. Like, he definitely depoliticizes, but he also politicizes it without saying that he's doing it. And yeah, I mean, I think Rogan sucks. It's not a mystery why he's popular. He's like a stand-up comic. He had a bunch of like hosting gigs on major television shows and stuff, like, and he leveraged that into a podcast and
MMA fighting.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's the
And he also just like brings on inherently, polarizing people, and so if you agree with that said person, and he basically agrees with their premises every time. If you agree with Candace Owens, you're going to enjoy Joe Rogan's show with her. If you agree with Bernie Sanders, you're going to enjoy Bernie Sanders' show with him. So it's just like he's
Jimmy
a vessel.
Dore?
Whatever, but more often than not, he's a vessel for that other side, like the wrong side, and so he doesn't really have, that's what.
Yes, there's a problem in this country, and there's a lack of real sort of like, that was always I think a big criticism that we had of Rogan is that I think he's just sort of like he's I don't know. Doesn't examine necessarily the things that he's. Look, so much of this YouTube world is chasing clicks and making the assessment that you made, which is like, you want to call it Worthington's Law, then so be it. It is. I'm going to have people on who have some currency in this medium, and that's the way you build shows. And that, unfortunately, is really not the way that you should do it if you want to educate people in any fashion. Like, you should be discriminate. You should be discriminate.
Don't you think it would be to his advantage then, with clicks and whatnot, to, I don't know, get someone a bit more, like, combative, like, I don't know, Sam Seder or something? I don't know.
Not necessarily. I don't think so. I don't think it would. I don't think so. I mean, he doesn't need. He doesn't need. Nobody needs clicks less than Joe Rogan.
He's on rails, yeah.
Yeah. I'll also make a point that there's a certain type of leftist who, like, I think rightfully says we should steer away from the culture war, but also says we should be a little bit more like Joe Rogan. And that is all Joe Rogan's content is. It's culture war from the right, which he generally lands on the right, but it's all culture war stuff. I mean, that's a depoliticizing tactic in itself.
Yeah.
But I would also say, you know, when you go into a tattoo parlor without your second shot, I don't know what the situation is, but I will be a little bit nervous. I mean, frankly, me personally, not so much nervous, but like, you know, I don't know. You just,
we wore masks.
Huh?
You didn't want to.
Yeah.
Right. But can I just say on that point, you know, them saying pharma has a perverse incentive. Tattoo parlors also have a perverse incentive to minimize the reality of coronavirus. And I wonder if that point was lost on them, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I mean, and on some level, it's like, I've held off on stuff that I could probably safely go in, but also part of it is just sort of saying like, you know, is signifying. It's sort of saying like, you know, I'm taking this seriously because there are other people who don't necessarily have multiple shots. There are other people who don't necessarily have access to, you know, to good hospitals or whatnot. I mean, that is, you know, it's like, it's either as a society we're addressing this or we're not.
Well, maybe just the way I communicate, but usually when I bring up those points, they just kind of brush them off like, well, I'm not going to take you seriously because, well, maybe because you're just overreacting about everything. And I don't know.
No, well, hang in there. Keep pushing.
You know, like my own brother kind of has similar thoughts, and it's just like I'm talking to a wall about these kinds of things.
Well, let me put it this way. You don't know when you're pounding on that wall, you don't know what's happening inside of it. So all I would say is keep at it. You don't know if it's if things are crumbling. And of course, you know, you're in a different context. I mean, you know, the different regions of the country have different perspectives on this, without a doubt. On some
this was
level.
in Iowa. I had to try the Iowa to get. But okay, well,
right, dude.
I mean, thanks for listening to me ramble. Okay,
appreciate the call.
It was all good. Thank you.
All right, we got to get going. Sorry, folks. All right, got to do a couple more items. I got to get out of here. Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I got hoodwinked. I was choosing that call. I'm like, wait, what if this is one of those things that's going to wrap me up for 10 minutes? Stop the thermal. Enjoy reading thousands of IMs instructions about how to cure hiccups. Nice guy. Would you play the Gotta Be Quick Drop for my snowflake friend Bob? We'll do that soon. Kid tested, Paula Bureau approved. This is the most secondhand embarrassed I've been in some time. It's like my aunts decided to do a YouTube show. That was the exactly. Marnix Gutfield sounds like a conservative Garfield and looks just as unfunny. 8 cheese. Sam Mama, do we know what time slot Fox sacrificed to make way for the uproarious content delivered on Gutfeld? I don't know what it was. And the final IM of the day. Thoughts on Clarence Thomas's opinion to regulate Twitter as a public utility. I've actually got a lot of thoughts on that. We'll talk more about that coming up. He had an opinion where he talked about Section 203, and the implications of this are wild. And I am not. My response was not as as negative, I think, as some people would think. Frankly.
Yeah. Well, it's Clarence Thomas. Wow.
See you tomorrow.
I take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.